Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. This is a special Saturday edition, but since we don't have a Holy Rivals show because Wild Ute's out of town, I thought we'd do something that was more topical, and so we have our show today. I want to welcome everybody for being here this Saturday afternoon. I know there's a little bit of difficulty with people's schedules on Saturday afternoons, but I really appreciate all of you that are here now, and thanks for joining us. We're going to have a special show today. We're going to talk about the ACC, which we've done before, but we're really going to focus on SMU and kind of what this realignment looks like for them. So I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. With me is our key contributors, Moen Sports, and Immaculate View. And then we have our guest today is Charles Foster Malloy, who is a SMU booster. You want to say hey, guys?
Hey, Charles Malloy. I'm an alumni and a fan, so not really a booster.
Okay, whatever. I'm not talking money. I mean,
I get more freedom that way.
Okay, all right. Immaculate?
Hey, guys. You know me, hopefully. Looking forward to talking a little SMU. They kind of fascinate me, their whole position in this and the place that they've put them into. So watching the ACC just could be popping at any moment, and possibly SMU is part of that. We shall see.
Moen, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, guys. I'm Moen. I hate Notre Dame. I hate Tony Altimore. I hate a lot of things. We'll have a rant segment later, I'm sure. I'm sure something will come along. So
you always get your skin in the game, I promise, Moen.
Show of hands, who all's blocked by Tony? I am.
I think I'm the only one that's not so far. I haven't.
And I've almost kicked Immaculate off the show for not being blocked.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
He's been on tender hooks, whether I keep him on the show or not, because he's not blocked by Tony Altimore.
Oh, really?
All right. Well, before we get started, let me do a little bit of business here. I want to thank everybody for being here. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button in the main Mafia page, and then you can. Once you're a subscriber, please turn on your notifications. Hit that little bell. It's below the video, and it'll let you know when the shows are reserved and ready to go out. And I want to make sure nobody misses any live shows. I also want to do a quick shout out to Coug Connect. That's a BYU NIL collective. On the screen you're looking at right now in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a QR code. On that QR code, it will bump you right to the Coug Connect webpage and sign up. If you're a BYU fan and you're not contributing to an NIL, I know LDS people are cheap generally and more big picture. We already give a lot of money to the church for tithing, but the BU Athletics needs money too, and they don't get money from the church, and so we need to be contributing to our local NIL collectives, and the one that I am working with is Coug Connect. So scan that QR code, go to the page, sign up for $10 a month, and start building this program up from where we are to where we want to be. The other thing I want to shout out to is all those partners and people that we've been working with at Your College Sports Connection. And also all the people that have been on my show in the last 2-3 weeks. I want to make sure that those are recognized. And so go to the video library and click on them. There's Bob Thompson, Big Ten Ted. We had John Kurtz on the other night. Lots of contributors, and I want to make sure that they're getting recognition and all of that. So before I think that's all the business I need to do right now. I'll come back to a few things later in the show, but right now I want to introduce Charles Foster Malloy. And Charles, tell us kind of what your history is and why you're here representing the rooting interest for SMU.
Well, I went to SMU. I went there for law school. Loved the school very much. Had a great time, but it was the beginning. At that time, it was the very beginning of the death penalty. The year they were down, it really was the beginning of a long-term death, and we've been waiting for SMU to recover ever since. It's been a long, slow, arduous process. I remember when I was in high school, SMU was very popular in the Southwest Conference. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I went to school with the Jones boys of the Dallas Cowboys. My brother played football with Stephen. Stephen was the quarterback. My brother was his wide receiver. And a lot of people from my school went to SMU. It was besides the University of Arkansas, SMU was probably the most popular school in Little Rock of the people I knew. I ended up not going there at undergraduate. I went to a sister school, a small one in Shreveport, Louisiana, where I am right now, called Centenary College. I went there for 2 years, and then I transferred to LSU in Baton Rouge. So I'm also a very big LSU fan and supporter. I support Centenary, and I support Trinity, where my son plays football now. So those are all my schools. I in the past, in order to advise my son through the recruiting process, I got engaged into investigating recruiting in college football. That's kind of how I got involved and did it for a number of years. I helped LSU as a fan on social media, encouraging young high school players to consider LSU. And during that period that I helped, we ended up winning a national championship. We also, sorry, Mullen, we stole Joe Burrow from you during that time period. My son and I were at a clinic at a football camp at LSU the day that Joe Burrow showed up for his first day at LSU. And he walked out into the middle of the field, in the middle of the indoor practice facility. I remember watching Joe. I go, "Oh, that's Joe." Pointed to my son Foster. I said, "That's Joe Burrow right there. We got him." And he walked out in the middle of the field, stood in the middle, and looked around. I got chills. I knew right then we were going to win a national championship. It took 2 years, but we did. In any case, my son ended up picking Trinity University, where he is now, and so I finished with the recruiting stuff, or at least the personal reason to be involved. And I kind of laid low, watched his first couple of years of football. They won 2 conference championships, went undefeated in regular season, and went to the playoffs at Trinity. That's Division III. Losing to the national champion the first year, and lost to them again last year to UH and Big, University of Mary Hardin Baylor. 2 years in a row, they bowed out to them. But in any case, I really wasn't involved in anything other than watching my son play his first 2 years. He's in his third year as a junior now. Hopefully he's going to be very active as a junior. We'll see. They're finishing up practice now. And when the realignment started, I kind of re-engaged and decided I really wanted to. I helped LSU. Now I want to help SMU. And so I've been pretty active on social media, trying to keep SMU's name in the forefront of consideration, where I think they belong. And I also believe Tulane belongs there. In all fairness, I didn't go to Tulane, but my great-grandfather went there for law school. He was valedictorian of Tulane Law School. So, and then my kid's mother went to Tulane. So I also am promoting Tulane, but not as much as for SMU. But I do think they both belong as the number 1 and number 2 team from among the G5, period. I mean, Colorado State, I think, has an argument to be number 1. Certainly the service academies, I don't know. No one's given me a good reason why they're not being actively recruited. They're actually like P5 schools if you look at their media viewership numbers. But after the service academies, there's about 5 or 6 schools that really belong among the P5, and SMU and Tulane are right there with them. Colorado State's there, Boise State's there. Believe it or not, Utah State is there, and Air Force is there. And then right after that group, I never would have known this if I hadn't seen the statistics. Toledo is right after SMU. And then ECU, Appalachian State, Marshall, Fresno State, Ohio. Then you get to UConn and San Diego State. It's not until all those schools I just listed that you get to frequently talked about Memphis, and right after them is Tulsa. Just ahead of Memphis is Western Michigan. I never would have thought that, but if you're looking strictly at media value, what the media numbers are, the eyeballs that they draw, average per game, the list I just ran down are the top 16 G5 teams plus Air Force is in there. Ranked above them is number 1 Navy, number 2 Army. They're both ranked above all the G5. And then Air Force is tucked in among the top 5 or 6.
Okay. I appreciate that rundown, by the way. Those are schools that definitely, I mean, college football has been an elite club for a long, long time. And they've kept out other members, as we all know here on this call, forever and ever, trying to keep the access limited. And the system has been corrupt for a long, long time. So what we're talking about today is, what does that next step look like for some of these schools? Now, before we get into the conversation, I want to do a shout out for some of the guys who were here right at the beginning of the show. David Hackett, who's one of our one of our members that's here. Blake Phillips, Earl Carr, another member. And then let me get down. Opie was in the house early. So was Devil Frog. I mean, Moth Prof, which I always have difficult saying. Let's see here. Malmy PDX, Conundrum. Greg Swaim's in the house. Hey, Greg. Good to see you. Glad you could make it. R. Webb, who's also one of our new members. Good to see you, R. Webb. Appreciate you being here, man, and becoming a new member. I really appreciate that. Craig Hirsch. Let's see here. Cougar Tracks is in the house. Good to see you, Cougar Tracks. And let's just see here. Daryl, MVP 24. Let's get a little bit farther. Starter 179. And S. Reed. And DF Ost. DF Ost and S. Reed. Thanks for being here, guys. Mr. Monkey's rounding out that first bunch of people. So thank you very much for being here, everybody. Please think about subscribing. Give us a comment or suggestion for the show. We will follow up with that at the end when the show's over. If you want to join as a member, go to the main Big 12 Mafia page, and right in the middle of the page, there's a join button. Click it, and it'll pop up with 3 options, and that's a good way to get your comment out. And then I always defer to the member comments first. And then obviously, if you really want to get your comment out and you want to get your topic read and you're not a member, Super Chat would do that. And I read all Super Chats. All right. Immaculate. I'm going to give you actually, before I open it up for general conversation, I want to show everybody where Charles and I started with this conversation yesterday. Let me bring up this picture. If it pops up. I've had trouble with the screen sharing recently. I don't know what's going on.
It looked like it was clocking.
Yeah, it tries. There we go again. All right. So there was a post put out by Jim Williams. We've been talking about the opportunity for maybe Cal, Stanford, and SMU has been the one that's been brought up from the G5 ranks to join the ACC. And so there was a conversation and a message that Jim had put out that I replied to. And my reply was, the ACC turning into a garage sale of a conference. If they actually bring in SMU, it's only a money grab. To prostitute their elite conference this way is complete undercuts the moral authority they have to claim an A-quality conference. Very sad day if it happens. So Charles replied, and he read it that I was attacking SMU. This actual tweet is directed at the ACC. The ACC is basically, they're grasping at straws, and they're dangling an opportunity for SMU to join. They're not doing it out of their own sweethearts. So basically what I meant there is that the ACC is doing anything they can to make their members, their current membership, more money. And if they brought in SMU, it would purely be a money grab. They're looking for more money to give to the rest of their members. To take a school in without any reimbursement for multiple years in a media deal, I think is just criminal. I think SMU deserves to be at a full partner in a conference. I believe San Diego State does. I believe Colorado State does. There's 6 or 7 that I would right off the top of my head say they belong in a A4 conference, because we're not using the P anymore. So if we go to 4 conferences of 20 schools, that brings in an additional 12 schools that aren't currently in one of those conferences. So there's numbers that you could build up. Our current model that we've been selling is 3 conferences of 20 schools. But if you went 3 conferences of 24, that goes up to 72 schools that would be in the upper division of opportunity to win a national championship. That means there would be between 6 and 8 schools that would be added to what is already a fairly full slate of schools that are competing at that highest level. So I want to be very clear. I am not ripping on any attitudes or opportunity that SMU takes, San Diego State takes, any method that they can use to get into the conference. I say more the merrier. If you can pull it off, go for it. But I don't think it's okay for a conference to say, we're going to bring you in and you're not going to get any money. The only reason you're coming in is because you're willing to write us a check. So now that we have that context, Immaculate, did you want to ask questions, follow up on that?
That's a big follow-up between the two of you. Starting with his, it might be a bit easier for me to unpack.
You just froze.
Go ahead. I can hear you, Immaculate.
Okay. I personally feel that SMU has a place in the ACC, but maybe not in the ACC as we see it right now. I never really thought that their inclusion was meant to keep the ones who already want to leave. I think their inclusion helps create a more well-rounded out kind of private university style conference once those major public universities leave. I found that interesting that Notre Dame was part of that push, whether that was totally part of the Stanford push. I mean, you look at Stanford, you look at SMU, Notre Dame, what's the one thing that combines? Well, it's mostly just private university. SMU and Notre Dame have some other similarities. What SMU brings to the table on that, I see some people talking about attendance numbers and things. Well, how much attendance do they get if Notre Dame comes to town to play SMU in a stadium in Dallas, Texas? How much attendance do they get if Stanford comes? I don't know. But when you start to put into it, it's less to do, in my opinion, with SMU's value right now and more to do with the value of being seen in that DMV. So I see that some of the value there, and I think maybe to cross that threshold, they would probably have to pay their own way. So as detestable as that is, that we've gotten to that point, I do kind of have to tip my hat to the SMU folks who are willing to do that. I mean, that is some serious gumption to say we would pay for this, whether it's some private donors or some coming from the school. I don't know. But, he brought up Tulane. Tulane's part of that conversation as well. Once again, private university, good market area. There seems to be almost an equation here for what the future of the ACC will be once the exodus, so to speak, happens. So kind of going in on that. And in terms of with you, I appreciate everything you're saying on that. I just think it's just a business thing. Everyone's kind of have to try to work out the numbers here. And I don't think that they're intended to keep schools in. I think it's intended to be replacements for schools that might be leaving. So if you want to go any deeper in anything else, maybe ask a leading question in that. But between the two of you, there was a whole lot there to unpack.
Well, let's see. College Football Plus has got a comment here, and I think we can answer this directly. It says he's saying, but if SMU has the potential, quote unquote potential, then why has the Big 12 passed up on them 2 to 3 times, depending on how you count it? And the Pac-12 didn't have enough support to add them. So, Charles, what do you think about that?
Well, that's a very good question. It's 2-part. The question itself is why. And they all come up with rationales, reasons that sounds reasonable. Oh, we already have the Dallas market covered with TCU. Bull. If you're saying SMU doesn't bring what you need, then TCU doesn't bring it, and that's just not true about TCU. The Dallas market is huge. It's massive. It's too big for just TCU. The LA market's huge, and the Big Ten got 2 schools, UCLA and USC, for a reason. They sewed up the LA market. The Dallas market's almost as big, and it's big enough for 3 schools. Frankly, you could throw in UNT and still have room for more. Baylor's close enough that it sucks off of Dallas also. But the real reason that they keep getting passed over by the Big 12 is their old friends from the Southwest Conference remember how they were dominated. I mean, dominated by SMU back in my day, when I was in high school, when I was in college, when they won the national championship. I mean, I later played poker with Lance McElhaney, who won the national championship for the quarterback for SMU. He was a cool guy. The whole crew they were really cool. The Pony Express. They remember how dominant SMU was, and they took players they felt like away from TCU, away from Baylor. They kind of lived in SMU's shadow for a long time in the Southwest Conference, and same with Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech was just they cleaned the floor with Texas Tech. And Houston, actually, when they came in, Houston was a good G5 type school, and they were a very good add to the Southwest Conference. But SMU was still better than them. But you don't see as much resistance from the Houston people like you do from Texas Tech, Baylor, and TCU. They fear dominance by SMU. They really do. And it goes back to my age group and even older. That's what I think's going on. We don't need another Texas school. Bull. Texas is a huge state, just like California, just like Florida. Texas is the equivalent of 4 states. If the ACC can have 4 teams from the state of North Carolina, then the Big 12 could have 5 or 6 schools from Texas. Another school that really needs to get considered, that's up and coming, is UTSA. I really am high on UTSA.
Moen, what do you think about all this?
Well, for starters, they didn't steal Joe Burrow from us. We let him leave. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so, it's a win for me either way. Joe Burrow's going to win multiple Super Bowls if the Crooked Zebras let him. And it doesn't come down to a coin flip. But yeah, I know the SMU thing. You're right. Life's unfair. There's a lot of schools that should be but aren't. San Diego State's a prime example. SMU's a prime example. Tulane's a prime example. But unfortunately, consolidation, people get left out.
Yeah.
And, you've still got Oregon State and Washington State looking for homes, and they're still P5. And when inevitably the ACC folds, you're going to have teams there looking for homes as well. I think it's better for SMU because nobody's going to get the votes in the ACC. The ACC is not going to expand. I don't see it. I don't even if SMU cuts them a giant check. Cal and Stanford agree not to take money for the first 5 years. The ACC isn't going to expand because Florida State and the other ones don't want more votes to prevent dissolution. I think the best bet for all of those schools is to wait and potentially make a league once everything is settled down to become the next A4, or at least become the best G5.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. And that was one of the things that I replied back to Charles when we started this conversation is, look, the issue that the big guys are going to have when considering schools to come in, it doesn't always come down to their competitive balance, how well they've represented in the previous years, but nobody here can deny that SMU hasn't exactly dominated the conference that they've been in. So how do you counter that argument that say they are ready to step up, but Have they played good enough football to support it?
Are you talking to me?
I'm anybody, any one of you. Yeah.
I have something of an answer to that. I was there. I was at law school at SMU when the death penalty came down.
Right.
And it was a big disappointment. I was looking forward to going to the games. In fact, I used to go to keg parties with the head coach's son. He was a great guy to drink beer with. After that whole event occurred, SMU decided, as an institution, that they had emphasized sports and winning in football. And so they made a conscious decision, which was it was a mistake. It's the same mistake that a lot of these, the Cal and Stanford are in the middle of making.
True. Yeah.
And that some of the ACC schools, like Boston College, seems to have done. Others are starting to revert. Duke's always been back and forth. I expect them to be much better. They hired a really good coach, as did Wake Forest. But SMU re-emphasized academics. It was always considered a Southern Ivy school, but they'd kind of gotten away from that focus, building academics, and they built a name for themselves with the Pony Express football. They really put some money into it, kind of like what they're doing now. Only back then, it was considered against the rules. Little did we know, the Supreme Court says, oh, no, these kids are entitled to compensation for their name, use of their name, image, and likeness. Right. And there's a way to do what SMU did, do it legally. And so now there's a whole group of guys that made a lot of money, and now they're wanting to bring SMU back to where it once was. And they're committed to it with their funds, with their pocketbooks. And the school is back on board with it. But for a period of time, they de-emphasized sports. They really didn't put up a fight when the Big 12 was formed and they were excluded. They were thinking they were going to go more of an Ivy League type route. And so they kind of laid down, which was a big mistake. And just like it would be a big mistake right now for Stanford and Cal to do that. I mean, they might as well go D3. My son's school, Trinity, is a D3 school. It's a high academic school. They play with a lot of great colleges. MIT's D3, Carnegie Mellon's D3, University of Chicago's D3, Johns Hopkins is D3. So if that's what you want to do, they've got some great schools to go up against. But I think it would be a mistake and they would regret it. They need to rethink their course. And I think that if they're talking to the ACC, I think they're working on that. Somebody, when we first started this, after it was announced that USC and UCLA were going to the Big Ten, that's when I really got engaged and started doing my own same kind of stuff Moen's been doing, building conferences and stuff. And what I really envisioned was the private schools at some way or another clustering, even if it was a division of a third conference like the Big 12. If the Big 12 was an amalgamate of the Pac-12, the ACC and themselves, and a few select others, it was going to be a huge, I got the numbers up to around 44 schools, in which case you'd have like 11 divisions of 11. There are 16 private schools, and they're all good schools. Some are better than others. Stanford is among the best, but so Miami's good. There are some really good private schools with good history. Notre Dame, Stanford, Miami, USC, SMU, among the best. Historic, if you're looking at the historics, that's 5 of the best. But, Wake Forest is good. If you look at their history, they've been good at football off and on. Purdue's the same way. They had a good year last year. Purdue's not private, however. But I kind of put them in the same boat. Kind of like Cal's a public school, but it's kind of like William and Mary. William and Mary is, as far as I know, it's the only public school that was invited to join the Ivy League, and they turned it down because they weren't private. That's the second oldest school in the country. could be an amalgamate of schools that are high academics that play football at a high level. Included within them are TCU and Baylor, and now upstarts Liberty, and not really an upstart, but a traditional BYU. I don't typically think of BYU as fitting in that group, but they absolutely do belong in that group. There's 16 of them, and Vanderbilt, Northwestern. These are all high academic schools that are also good at football, and I'd love to see them all wind up together. Now it may happen in stages, it may not happen, but what Immaculate was talking about a minute ago about it seems like there's an idea that there's a direction the ACC might be going. I absolutely see that. I could also see it as what we're talking about here is a consortium of schools that are trying to strengthen their negotiating and bargaining power with media. And media is trying to direct things where they can negotiate with fewer schools but still maintain their leverage over the schools. In all these smaller divided conferences, they can pretty much treat them however they want. Look how they just treated the Pac-12. That whole thing, even though I don't like a lot of the wokeness, I'm totally against wokeness, and the wokeness is what's ruined them, make no doubt about it. But media did it to them.
Well, okay. So did you watch our show with Bob Thompson?
I did not. No.
Okay. So I'm just going to paraphrase a couple things we got from Bob. So you know who he is first, right?
Yeah. Okay. I meant to watch that show. In fact,
okay. I would really recommend you go back and watch it because
like 5 days ago.
It was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was last week.
Last Thursday. Okay.
Yes, that sounds right. So we had him for 45 minutes, which he normally doesn't do interviews that long. And we asked him a lot of good questions. And I can't remember if it was Ute or Immaculate that asked the question that was on this point. But basically, it was who's the big bad in all of this? Is it the conferences or is it the media companies? Because for the last year, all we've been told, primarily by the Pac-12, that it's been the big bad media companies that are driving all of these decisions, right? Well, Bob came on and couldn't have been more definitive about the fact that's a bunch of crap. And basically what he said is they don't do it. He's never called anybody to make any changes. Now, they have conversations about where these deals are going to be, but usually what they're driven by is the exclusivity of the conference, and then the media people come in and we'll give them evaluation. And that's a big difference because the Pac-12 tried to tell everybody for an entire year, including Tony Altimore, who was their leading prophet, that the only reason any of these dollars were being talked about was because Big Bad Fox and ESPN and NBC and CBS and TBS and whoever else you want to, MTV, you want to put in there, they were the ones dictating where the values were at. And Bob couldn't have been, he said that just isn't true. So the idea that the exclusionary part of this is driven by the media companies, I could not disagree more. So
all right, if I could just go, the simple answer is us. We are the big evil. We determine this with who we watch, what we watch. Those are ratings. Those ratings are then looked at by ad companies who want to put their products in front of us. They determine which games they want to be on and how much those end up being paid for to the networks companies. The network companies then tell the conferences, these are the ones that we get more money for. These are the matchups and all of that get more money for. And then the conferences are making the final decisions about who they want to be on because they want to get to that money. So everyone's looking for like a big bad evil, but there isn't one. It's just how the market works. And the conferences make their final decisions on who they invite and who they want to be with.
I think the conferences dictate all of it.
It's a mixture.
No, but what are they dictating it based upon?
If you just were going by media valuation per school, there's a lot of schools that might be included. Boise State is a wonder. They make a bunch of money, but they're not in a conference. If it was just ad revenue, there's a bunch of schools that would be in that aren't. So the conferences align with people that they want to be aligned with.
The
It's a
ratings,
Not
mixture.
the reverse.
it's based
But
upon
they
the
are-
ratings, man.
It's
And
a
they
gentle
don't-
hand.
it-
Why was Yormark cut off? Why is he cut off here? Why are not at least 2 of the Pac-4 part of the Big 12? Why not all 4? Now I could see maybe Stanford wouldn't have it, but my understanding is they were rebuffed. They didn't have the money. They couldn't get pro rata. They were cut off.
For which
Why did
schools
they
are you
cut?
talking
Why
about?
they cut that off? Why didn't they go ahead and build the 20 or 25 schools? Now they're number 3. They're not number 1 or number 2. They're number 3. That conference needs to be bigger than the other 2. The other 2 are clearly going to 20. So the Big 12 of the A3 or what A4, they need to go to 24, 25. Why were they cut off? Why is UConn
All right.
not in?
I think I can go into that. Yeah, I got the.
And that's that.
The reason is the ACC. Like I get exactly where you're going with that, and the reason is the ACC. They're waiting to see what goes on to the East before they overload with schools to the West.
They're not going to build in the West and fill up the slots that they need
They
in
got
the
4
East.
slots open for ACC schools because once the top ones are going to the bigger SEC, there's going to be some that are looking for a home because that conference is going to be considerably devalued. And so what people are seeing now for a payout for the ACC and thinking, well, no, it pays out more than the Big 12. It's not going to remain that way. ESPN will renegotiate. They will lose their 2036 security blanket, and they will lose what they're getting paid out. And the Big 12 is sitting there at 16. And it sucks for OSU and WSU. And I don't like seeing it because OSU has done everything that they should do in order to be better than that. And I think that they might still. But right now, in the negotiation game, I think that Yormark is sitting at this position because he wants to be in as good a position as possible to grab, say, 4 schools from the ACC without maybe jumping over 20. And that sucks because some schools are being in tough positions right now. And that's the pain of going through consolidation. And hopefully it all plays out in a way that we can appreciate afterwards.
Do we really think the ACC is blowing up right now, or is this
No, I don't think they are.
precursor to
Mhm.
6 years from now?
No, I don't think it's
They're
going to
not
take that
blowing
long.
up now. They're not blowing up now, though.
I'll disagree.
Immaculate. They're
It
not
could.
going to
It could be
sign.
one
They're
big
not going to.
negotiated deal with what's going on.
Why are you saying that as if you know that for sure? I'm not saying I know this for sure, but I do believe it's coming sooner than I thought. I didn't think any of the pack was happening until next year. So
Well, the pack is different. I
No.
definitely thought the pack was.
it's pretty much all connected.
The PAC teams are free right now.
It's
The
all about
ACC
2026.
the
They're not
ACC
doing this for any other reason.
The ACC has schools that don't want to vote against their interest. They're not gonna add new schools that are gonna lengthen how hard it is to get out of that conference because it doesn't
Right.
blow the gore up.
Exactly.
That's why
That's
the
what
ACC
could
isn't
happen
going to
right
blow
now.
up now.
No.
If you
I'm
let them
saying-
out for $300 million apiece right now,
Right
or
now.
2.25, there's $1 billion on the table. Let them out. 4
I
of
don't
them.
think
Let them out
I don't
right
think
now.
it's going to be that much, but they will have to come to a number because the inevitable is the inevitable. They could work this now in this window. I mean, you want to say something? Go ahead. I'm just trying to say my point on this, Bomber, of why I think this is sooner rather than later. Because the longer they wait, the more they're only hurting themselves, all of them, across the board.
I agree.
I
there's
don't think
some-
it happens this year.
That's fine. But there
It
is an
could.
argument to be made for it happening this year. Maybe it doesn't.
Okay.
If you
All
put
right.
$1 billion on the table, $250 million per school, which would be low per school, but it's hard to walk away from $1 billion.
Those no votes
you
aren't
let
voting no.
FSU, Clemson, NC State, and let's put them in media viewership order: Clemson, FSU, NC State, and North Carolina. Who, by the way, North Carolina is less than Cal and more than Stanford, but right between them. So Cal and Stanford are just as good a media property as the University of North Carolina, and they're turning them away. That's pretty stupid on the ACC's part. I think this could serve as a catalyst to say, okay, get out, get the hell out, but we want $1 billion, and that's a good number, I think. Bottom dollar number. We could see it happen this weekend. They're out for $1 billion, and those schools, SMU and maybe even Tulane, 4 schools come in.
I don't think the number is going to be that high because really what the number has to be able to do is, one, cover the schools left behind to give them some cover for the amount that they're about to lose when that gets renegotiated. Can I finish the bomber?
I didn't say anything.
I just saw it. I saw it.
I
It
have
has
not
to,
said anything. You get your word in all you want, Immaculate.
It
Go
has
ahead.
to cover for the losses of the schools they're going to leave and how much they're going to lose on that when that gets renegotiated with ESPN. The second thing it has to cover is the cost of exit fees for G5s to come in and backfill. Not everyone is SMU. Not everyone can just pop in there and do that in any short amount of time. So if you're talking about a school like FSU, do you think that they're prepared to pay $200 million? Do you think Clemson is?
I think they are.
Do you think UNC could be? Do you think that North Carolina State could be? I don't know. But if you find enough who are, and they're holding up the vote to add in any more schools right now in this very delicate window, Stanford needs an answer by 2024. This doesn't wait multiple years. California needs an answer for 2024. There isn't time. So they've actually got this held up. And those are the only P5 replacements available to the ACC for whoever's going to leave. So they do it now, or they forever are just replacing with G5s with no chance to get any Ps. So I know you don't agree with that, but the window of opportunity, in my opinion, is now.
I agree. It's
what
now
I
or
default
6
back
years
to.
from now.
What I default back to is common sense.
All right, that's kind of insulting.
How so?
You're saying that what I'm saying is not common sense.
No,
it does not.
Look, we can disagree without you taking it personal.
Alternative common sense.
Okay,
There are
at the
multiple views.
Okay, so let's qualify it. My common sense, okay? Doesn't have to be yours.
Your opinion.
It's mine. That's all we do here. Immaculate is
but the way you're labeling it is that there's only one perspective.
Look. Okay, if you're taking that, that's on you.
No, it's not. I'm just saying the way you.
We can say different things, Immaculate.
Okay,
and
then just say it's your opinion.
Thing.
It's not common sense. It's just your opinion. We don't have much information on this, so it's just two different opinions on how this is going down.
Well, no, we do. I think we do have a lot of information.
Okay, then that's what I'm basing my opinion on, and I'm not saying it's just common sense, and anyone who disagrees with it has none.
Okay, I never said those things.
Listen, can I get a word in here?
Yes, please do.
Can I get a word in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Charles, while we have you here, you were at SMU during the death penalty. Do you have any comment on the fact that Craig James killed 5 hookers, allegedly?
I'd never heard that story. Never heard it.
It's just a legend. Allegedly, he killed 5 hookers while at SMU.
That's crazy.
I doubt it.
Okay.
So
seriously, where is?
Let's talk now. I don't even know what was.
Never heard that story.
All right, let's just break it down in detail. If the ACC wants to expand, they've talked to 3 schools that we know of. They've talked to SMU, they've talked to Cal, and they talked to Stanford. If more voting members go in to the ACC, that makes it harder for schools to get out of the gore or to blow up the conference.
Correct.
So that's more voting members that would be in the conference.
Which is why they're not getting in.
So the Florida State, and I agree with you, I don't think they're getting in this year either.
Unless,
there's always exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
There's always exceptions.
And what would change those votes?
Right today, I don't think anything does.
So you're saying an agreement for them to get exits out of the ACC doesn't change those votes? You can think that doesn't happen. I know. Hold on one second, Charles. You can think that that's not possible, and that's fine. That's a viable opinion. But all I'm asking is, if that was put on the table, if an actual price that doesn't have to be litigated in court, you don't have to go and get a judgment or a settlement on, which is the case now at the Gore. You have to take it to court or you have to settle together. That's not happening. But in this one case, if they want to hold this up and say you will never get anyone in here unless you give us a price of exit, is that not something that they might ask for in return?
Oh, I'm sure they could. Yeah, you bet they could ask for it.
But you're saying that there's no way they get that.
I don't think so, because if you lose those 4 schools that we've all talked about, let's name them: Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. Okay.
North
NC
Carolina, North
State.
Carolina State. Yeah, I think there's
Virginia
more than
Tech,
four.
whatever it is.
Right. Absolutely. There's more than four, but
Those
you're right
those
on.
schools, right? If they want to get out, there's only two ways they get out. They can sue to get out, or they could blow up the conference. I guess there's more than two. They could blow up the conference, or in some way they could trade votes, which is what you're proposing. That's another option. The problem I have with that is, to do that, they would cut off their nose to spite their face. In my opinion, if they do that, they lose so much in media value that ACC ceases to be an A conference.
You're not
If
wrong.
you lose Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, and any number of other schools, the value of the conference goes down so far that there's no way bringing it in Cal, Stanford, and SMU can make up for it.
Okay.
This is the problem that the Pac-12 had. They had the exact same issue. There's no way that they could replace what they had lost with with UCLA and USC. When they tried to come up with that math, they couldn't find a media partner anywhere that was going to pay them between more than 23 or 25 million dollars to replace those schools in that conference to keep it viable.
That's great logic. It's perfect logic. Can I retort that?
Of course you can.
Okay. And then I'll keep this really quick so you can go right back onto it. The dissolution vote. That is what we don't know. That's the great unknown. We don't know if there's actually 8 schools that are sitting there saying, we don't want to do this. This is horrible. This is a terrible idea. We do not want to vote to dissolve. But the situation for us in the future is to a point now where we feel like if you put us to that, we will do it. And if they do that, all the schools that don't have a spot in the Big 10, the SEC, or the Big 12, they are FUCK'd. They are totally nailed to the wall. And that is the fear that they need to have right now. Right now, you need to be worried that that's going to happen to you, and that you need to take the deal that is offered to you, even if it's $200 million a pop for everyone who wants out. You take that, and at least you have that for your future, and you can get whomever you want to backfill with right now. If you don't do that now, you are possibly losing out big time on the future when these other schools are ready to go.
So let's play that out. Those schools leave. Who wants to be in a rump ACC when you could possibly have a home in the Big 10 or the Big 12?
Can I break out my big crazy conspiracy talk hat right now for this
I'm
one?
not sure how far down this rabbit hole we want to go.
You mind if I go into that, Charles?
No, I love it.
Go ahead.
I'm talking about the Ivy League here right now. I'm talking about Cho et al. Versus Brown University. I'm talking about the fact that the Ivy League should not have the ability in Division I to not pay their students athletic scholarships. They don't. They just take money and hand out to whomever they think needs a little bit in order to get by. They have had their own special rules in Division I for a long time, and they're getting called out on it right now in court. And if you think it's not a big deal, then 4 Ivy League schools have sent their own defense teams in order to partner with Brown University on this. This, and I bet Charles can attest to this, this attacks their very traditions and their culture in that league. If they cannot have some of their legacies put students on those teams, they stand to lose a lot of money in guys having their kids go to school there. So they do not want this to happen. But if it's going to happen, if they're going to lose, they need to find a solution. And this only solution I see is for them to move football into the ACC once it's cleared out. And they turn football into a moneymaker that pays for the rest, and then they drop the rest into Division III. As Charles talked about, there's a lot of good schools there, but you don't have to pay scholarships in Division III. And that's where they would drop.
Division III and the Ivy League work exactly the same.
And so those schools have, if they don't have access to the Big 10 or a Big 12 invite or an SEC invite, they're going to have alternate means to try to keep their programs together.
And that would be the payout right now.
It would be
to hold it together.
But that's money. Money only buys you a little bit of time. It's not a fix for down the road.
The amount that we're talking about is a lot of time. And if you get like the Ivies coming in and you get your select crew of private universities, I could market that.
Okay. And you might be able to. Who's going to buy it? You might be able to put a marketing plan
People
together.
Who like to spend how many hundreds of dollars on a crappy T-shirt with a big name brand on it. People who want to
they don't have huge fan followings. If they did, they would already be playing.
It's because
big
they don't
That-
have large
football.
alumni
That
following.
may change very soon
But
as
again,
football
go
turns
ahead.
into the semi-pro league. People like me are going to gravitate towards real college football, what I call real college, amateur sports. That whole, I'm telling you, I mean, I'm affiliated with a Tier 3 professional basketball team. I'm general counsel to it. I'm friends with the founders. My children are stockholders. I'm their trustee. That doesn't pay very well at all. We don't make very much money. But we're 2 levels below the NBA. You're talking about creating a semi-pro league out of the A2, and
we aren't on this show. We don't cobble to that.
well, I'm not
believe
saying
that's gonna happen.
you as in you. I'm talking about you as in we.
A lot of people, but not a majority.
And it's not going to work. I don't think it's long-term sustainable.
I don't think
if
it's
you
going
do,
to
you're
happen.
going to denigrate the whole thing, and we're going to be back to square one. And in the meantime, the schools that stick to the traditional amateur sports, real college football, they're going to gain in following. And Big 12 and Pac-4 and ACC, they're all in a position to ride both waves. They could go one way or they could go the other. Whereas the Big 10 and the SEC that are committed to semi-pro football, it looks like they're the ones that could be the big losers. It could all come tumbling down, and very quickly. Tier 4, there's the NFL, there's XFL and USFL, and then there's SEC and Big 10.
So, Charles, there are a lot of barriers, legal, procedural, organizational, that are going to stop an A2 league starting. For one, the biggest one is they would lose their tax write-off status, which once you're not associated with anything that has to do with the rest of the school, and you have a bunch of schools that are cut out of the process, you're talking lawsuits galore, something like that to get started. I don't know if you're familiar with like soccer in England and
not
Europe.
Real. Just
So they tried to put a super league together there with the Liverpools, the Manchester Cities, and they tried ripping away that from these smaller, like the Evertons of the world, and they tried to start their own league. And what happened? The public rose up and said, "You're not going to disenfranchise our schools, our schools."
See, I fully expect that. You're right.
But
it
didn't happen though. It didn't happen. It broke up. They didn't complete the Super League. That's my point. There was so much of an outcry that it folded in 3 days. It folded because there was so much pushback between legal and then all their fans saying, "No, this is not acceptable." So these people that are promoting a P2 world, the top 35 to 40. For one thing, I would really question who those sources are.
Right.
How much respect do we give Trev Alberts? Yeah, he's an AD of a dying school, right? They were blue blood, and now they're running him into the ground. So nobody here believes in that P2 thing, and we believe that it's going to be somewhere between 24 and 25 team leagues, probably 3 of them, and that's 75 schools or 72 schools. That would include an SMU. That would include a San Diego State, potentially a UConn, Boise State. If you went to that many schools,
I'll tell you, no, I don't think it goes that. I think you're going to have to go larger. I've got a list.
There's a capacity issue. There's only so many games you can do in a league that is greater than the reason.
The streamers are going to add to that.
Now there's not. Everybody. That's what the Pac-12 talked about for a year. It's all about streamers. Everybody's going streamers. They're out of business. Streamers aren't going to be additive. Oh, I'm not saying it's not additive, but it can't be the solution
Plus
itself.
Is ESPN. When ESPN is streaming, it's all over. It's everything streaming, and that's happening in the next 3 years.
But it's still about windows. They're still going to produce games in the same window.
And
how many games can you put? How many games can you put in the same window in an afternoon on a Saturday?
With a streamer, you can run 3 and 4 or 5 in
No,
parallel.
you're missing my point. How many are going to watch them? How many people are going to watch those games? If there were a lot, the Pac-12 would still be kicking.
How many TVs do you have, and do you watch it once? Now.
Well, I have teams. I have teams in every time zone that I support.
Right, me too. And I'll flip between at least 3 games.
But the problem is most people on a streamer, you're insulated from the rest of the over-the-air stuff.
I know. That's why you better have a bunch of games to keep people, or they're going to leave to go see another game and never come back.
But that's the problem
Amazon
with a streamer.
And Apple, they need at least 24 teams, 25 teams. They need to run 3 games concurrently at all times, and then at least 1 at night. That's 10 games on a Saturday. And you're talking
about the broadcasters. You're talking about the streamers, right?
I'm talking about Apple. Yeah.
No. Okay. But if you're talking about they have to have a contract with some conference.
They need a big conference. They need 24 or
I can
30
imagine the AAC
32.
and the Mountain West going that direction.
Yeah, the combination, a merger between the AAC and the Mountain West and the remnants. That's a great conference.
I think people
and
can
Apple
see
should
that.
be all over that and fund it.
We
and I
agree
expect
with
them
that.
to do that. And you know what that's going to do? That's going to cut off. That will kill the ACC. If the ACC doesn't take the Pac-4 now, they're dead.
Well, I think they're
it may
dead
take
man
a while,
walking
but
anyway.
They can save themselves right now by adding these teams in SMU and Tulane. They can save themselves right now by expanding right now. If they don't, they're dead.
They save themselves today.
All
right, Charles, they save themselves today, but in 4 years, or 2026 is 3 years away.
Yep.
When that new contract comes out, go ahead, Immaculate.
No. You're going good, man. I was
I think that's in 2026 is 3 years away. They're going to start working on that contract this fall.
24.
Brett Yormark already said they're going to throw out the formula and rebuild something.
Yep.
Right.
Depending on 12 to 16 teams have access to the league, the playoffs, and
Yormark
then you're going to have
now too, or he's going to be locked out.
No,
if that
Yormark already did it. Yormark already did it, and he's waiting for the ACC to blow up.
He's not finished. They cut him off.
We're not saying
media partner cut him off, but he's not. He wasn't done.
I actually believe that if Cal and Stanford either go to the Big Ten or go to the ACC, that Washington State and Oregon State are going to end up in the Big 12.
I hope so. And that's a smart play. But
that's only 18 teams. So you still got to go ways and have some time before you pick up those other things. The ACC, the reason it's going to die on its own is because the big brands that we just talked about 15 minutes ago are going to go somewhere. They're going to go to the SEC or they're going to go to the Big Ten. They're going to chase the money at some point, whether that's when the conference blows up.
Bring these others in.
If you do that, but you don't survive is the thing.
If I could, real quick.
They do. They do it. Immaculate wants them to do. That's how they survive. Otherwise, they're dead.
I just want to interject something on Oregon State and Washington State, what I believe to be true. They already kind of know where they're going to go. I think Oliver Luck's already got some ideas. But the last one out, they might be sticking around just to take in those last payments that come in from like basketball and whatnot and things.
Sure.
When did those come? When did those distribute?
I don't know the dates in particular, but if you're the last ones there, good chance you're going to be getting some that
nice money.
So if they get Stanford and Cal out now, that money could help them if they say they have to go to the Mountain West for a little bit, or if they have to go to the AAC for a little bit, because I don't know how this works out with the Big 12. I would like to see them there, but I also think that the Big 12 is focused on the ACC right now. So
and that still leaves you 6 top end. If you're going to 24, if you've got Oregon State and Washington State, you let them in, you're still looking at 6 teams you could pick up from the ACC.
Maybe, and I could be wrong on that. I'm just saying, I think that them sitting in the pack right now doesn't necessarily mean they don't have an idea of where they're going. They're like, please. I think they're just waiting for Stanford and Cal to go. I think if that domino falls, I think the Oregon State, Washington State one falls quickly. And it might be to the Big 12. Yormark might be playing around with them saying, get that money because we can't get you. We can't get you more than $15 million right now.
I hope they do that. Look at all the assets
that money out of the bank on your way out. We'll get you in for $15 million. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. I think that they probably know something going on, and they'll probably get something, but it's going to be lower than what they were used to. So they could use that money going out the door.
We're an hour in, and this has been a lively conversation. I hope you've been around for a while, because we've been talking about a lot of stuff that nobody else is talking about. There's these schools that we're conversing about are currently on the outside looking in, or they're managing to fear because their conference might blow up around them. So these are great conversations. I'm going to just tell everybody we've been at 135 people watching live. That is fantastic numbers. We're really glad you're here. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, click that little bell button. If you want to be part of the conversation, we're going to get to comments here in just a little bit. We'll do comments, and then obviously any super chats, those always get read first. So if you want to get a comment in on this conversation, you want to be part of it, outside of just leaving a regular comment, I guarantee you we'll read it if it's a super chat. And then to all the members, there's a bunch of members in here today. I really appreciate you guys for being here. And obviously, if nobody does super chats, you guys' comments will be read first. Moen, I want to ask you a question. As a Big Ten, not both of you are Big Ten guys, but as an Ohio State front runner, you're basically in the catbird seat. How quickly do you see, because back channel stuff for the ACC, how quickly does the patience wear out in Florida State and Clemson? They just won't, they're just fed up, and they're going to do whatever they can to break out of their current situation.
Well, I mean, look, it's this month, it's August 30th, I believe, is when they begin the conversations for the new playoff format for 2026.
Yeah, I knew it was this fall.
And beyond.
Yeah,
it's this month, actually. I think I tend to agree with Immaculate. I don't think the ACC makes it to 2026
I don't either. I don't either.
Yeah, I think it's merely a matter of finding a lot of these schools places to land. If the Big Ten goes to 24, they're taking 3 of them plus Notre Dame. That leaves 4 for the SEC to take in. The Big 12 is probably going to take in at least 4 of them, probably Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse. I don't know where Virginia is going to end up, the Virginia Tech situation, but, they could end up with a Virginia Tech as well. So, I mean, that's it all comes down to 2026, and it's not going to be a P2. It's just not. It's going to be an A3. You're going to have the Big 12 as the junior member, and everybody's going to contribute something. The Big 12 is going to contribute to the basketball portion of the contract. The Big 10 and the SEC will contribute to the football side. It's not like, especially in the Big 10, there's room for everybody. Everybody contributes somehow, even if they're not the best at football. Indiana's got a great basketball program. Rutgers gives us the New York market. It's the birthplace of college football. So, I don't think people need to dwell too much on this Power 2 idea. That's not going to happen. The Big Ten's never going to go down that path. The brands in the Big Ten, like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, we're never going to go down that path. We're never going to relegate people. That's just not the way our conference works. And I'm sure Immaculate would agree with me. That's just not the way the Big Ten works. If another conference wants to do that, that's on them. But I don't think the Big 12 or the SEC would operate that way either.
No.
I think we're looking at an A3 that's going to be very cooperative with each other. The Big 12 is going to hold probably the most power, because they're going to be that vote that, you're going to have to court if you're the Big or the SEC to get kind of a change in things. And like Charles said, I think what you end up with is you do have this consolidated G5 with the handful of schools that get left out of the ACC, maybe Stanford and Cal. It's going to end up being essentially the little brother to the A3. It's going to be an A4, maybe an A-4.
I think 3 plus 1, something
it'll
like that.
be an A4, but we'll have a P3, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There'll have to be a fifth one. There will have to be at least
it'll be A4, because they won't lose autonomy status, but they won't really be a power conference
until 2026, where they could lose it. Right? They're going to reorganize that.
How does that work?
That's
Do you throw all the votes out the window and everybody has a vote after that? mean, how do you reconstitute that if they're still in
I don't know.
existence?
If there's three conferences of 24 teams a conference, even 20 teams, that's going to be a massive amount of power. 72 if you go to 24 team conferences.
Economic power, but I'm talking about voting power.
No, that is the vote. They would have 72 votes.
How do you,
There's
how
only
do you
132.
wipe out
Hold
a
on,
vote?
Charles. Charles, can
How
I
do you
make
wipe out a vote?
Hey,
How
Charles.
do you mechanically
Charles.
do it?
Are we okay? We need to clarify something here. Are we talking CFP votes or are you talking autonomy votes? Because the autonomy votes have nothing to do with the playoff and the setup yet. I think that's going to come. They're going to use the whole FBS to push on it. But for now, the votes in the CFP in order just to create the CFP in 2026 are pretty equal, and the G5 has considerable say in it. So
yeah, I was talking about the
it.
number of schools in
the autonomy
A3 conference.
Yeah,
that would be 72, which is more than half of the whole. That's what I was talking about.
But that probably won't affect the CFP because that's an actual company with like ownership stakes and so that gets into a whole different realm that we probably
we don't even know all the
two different
details.
things.
So
Yeah.
it's an organization.
It's
It's an actual company. You can go to their website right now.
And
I
who
look at it
owns
all the time to figure this out.
So who,
It's equally owned by 11 parties. It's 10 conferences and Notre Dame.
Notre Dame has a full.
There's
share.
11 manager votes on it, and then those manager votes each have 11.
well, I can assure you, then the
directors.
PAC will survive and get merged, and those votes, that ownership
don't
share
think so.
should get consolidated. Whoever buys the PAC will have combined vote and ownership.
The problem with that, Charles, is if the Pac-12 ends up disappearing altogether, that's going to go away.
When you merge, you're putting them together.
I'm not
The
talking
joint
about
ownership is
merging.
combined.
I'm talking about Cal and Stanford ending up in another conference, and Oregon State and Washington State ending up in another conference.
But there will be
then there is no Pac-12.
the
So
last one standing owns it.
these
There
aren't
could be only one.
That's what
These
we
aren't-
just said, though.
these aren't
Go ahead.
people like their ownership stakes aren't inherited or anything like that. They're other corporations. They're a corporate entity that's a part of it. If that corporate entity ceases to exist, I don't see how their vote gets passed down. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it
So
just
now-
goes away.
Well, then you can find an end around for that. It doesn't go away. It's a subsidiary of the Big 12 or a subsidiary of something. Maybe you leave one team in there and you have a scheduling agreement. You can write an agreement around that.
That's the
That's
one
game.
thing in consolidation, though. That's the one thing that these big conferences gain by eliminating another AQ conference is it consolidates, meaning you're taking away from something to put more power in a smaller number of hands. They don't want a fifth power conference.
Here's what I think Charles is getting at, and let me.
But if you're one of the three, you want their share. You don't want to
Right.
share their share
So
with the
I
other.
know, and I'm
Charles,
saying that would go to the Big 12.
Is what you're
I
saying?
think we're saying the same thing.
Hold on. Is what you're saying is that you think like that vote is this entity, this value that cannot be just disappeared, and that if the PAC goes away, that vote has to somehow be transferred to someone? Is that what you're thinking?
That's the typical. Now they may have it written
Right. I get what you're saying. Under most, I can see, especially you having your lawyer background, that's what's driving that. But I don't think this is the same way because you're talking about conferences that have a stake of ownership. Now, if a conference ceases to exist, I don't think that their ownership entity just gets passed around. They cease to exist. So now there's 10 stakes of ownership. The problem that really comes from that is that now that gives more, because from what I've seen, one dissenting vote up there means nothing happens. It's not where you only need a simple majority or a 75% majority. One vote messes up, which is why people are so mad at Notre Dame. Which is why when people talk trash about Notre Dame, I'm kind of like, I mean, they can sit there and make sure that you cannot have it be like a champions only type of playoff. Without Notre Dame in a conference, there's always going to be an opening for an outside school so that way they can get in. And so it's really not a big deal if the PAC ceases to exist and they don't have that vote anymore, because it's not like, well, this tips the vote, tips the scales. We just got over the 50% threshold to make something happen. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to affect business at hand, because all the schools that were part of that are still being represented by one of the conferences that's there.
If
It's
there's
just
less, sorry,
Yeah.
Immaculate,
No,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there's less AQ conferences, like right now there's 5, say the ACC and the Pac-12 cease to exist, schools get farmed out and go other places. Although I could see the ACC reconstituting, say Boston College and Wake Forest want to keep that conference together. They might keep the ACC together, and who knows what they do with their vote. But I can tell you this, they would prefer, the managers of this thing would prefer to have less AQ conferences, because the 5 get a larger cut of the college football playoff money than the other 6. So if you shrink those conferences, if conferences cease to exist, that's more money for the top end. You, instead of separating
why
it
can't
5
it all
times,
go to G5? Why can't 100% of the packs go to G5?
because that's not how it's
like
currently set up.
16%, right? 16%.
That's how you got it. That's how you got a G5 and an G6 and an A5. Yeah, you had 11 it's not even that. G5 and A5. And with all the big leagues, the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, ACC, and Pac-12, if those 2 conferences cease to exist as AQ conferences, it's more of the big money cut for a smaller number of mouths, and they want that. They want to shrink conferences.
Who gets it? How is it distributed among the 8/8?
That's actually a great question. It's actually being debated right now. They haven't even announced exactly how it's going to be in 2024. All we have are answers for 2023 this year, the last year of the 4 team, and how that payout goes. They haven't even put out the details of how that's going to work out, because they're fighting between, the way it used to be was you got a flat amount for your conference and you had to spread it out within your conference. So conferences that were going upwards in numbers of schools were getting less per school than like a conference that stayed at a smaller number. And so now that we're seeing these jumps in the Big 10s at 18, the Big 12s at 16, well, the Big 10 sitting here going, we don't want to take smaller cuts per school than what the Big 12 is getting per school. Yeah. So now that they're kind of growing in different, that's one of the reasons why you've seen them all want to be at 16, all want to be at 20, all at the same time. It's because of that payout and the way it was. And they don't have an agreed upon solution to that in the future for how to better do it. When we get that answer, that'll be one thing that we'll all be talking about when it comes to.
Didn't you say you recently investigated that, and you would talk to Greg Flugar about that it was not how you first thought it was, that it's actually already changed to some degree?
Yeah, because I looked at the actual website for the college football playoff, and the numbers that they showed were for this one. And then Greg was like, no, that's not what I've seen. I've seen elsewhere. So I went and looked on, Googled and looked around while he was having his show. And I found some talk about how they are looking to change that aspect, and that will be different in 2024. But we don't have exact details that have been nailed down and agreed upon and voted upon. So the debate is still on.
Do we have access to the organizational documents, the charter and the bylaws of the college football playoff organization?
I've gone through their website and I haven't seen that. You might be able to do a request on it, but because of the way they set it up as a corporation, I would tend to think that we don't have access to it.
It's probably a private nonprofit.
Yeah. You guys could take, you two guys, since you're legal and Immaculate knows.
I'm not on his level.
But you guys could get together and do a project and try to sort that out.
Mo would probably be better for that than me. But yes, I would love to do that sometime.
I think it's in SMU's. It's in SMU's best interest, the fans, the rooting interest, to find the answers to these questions. Because right now, the only thing that SMU's been hanging on, just like San Diego State, was they were told they were going to get something. I guarantee you, they were told, you're in the Pac-12. And then the whole thing fell apart, and they got screwed because nobody was willing to communicate with them. So what I would say, Charles, and we're not going to solve this here on the show today, is get with Immaculate, maybe, or Moen, whoever you want, and try to sort out those details. because I know 2026 is brand new, but what happens between now and 2026? Maybe it changes. That could,
Does it
those
sunset?
details could have.
Does the current structure automatically, what we call in legal terms, sunset?
We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. See, those I don't even know that terminology.
I believe that the format of the playoff does sunset. It's only for the playoff contract that everybody has agreed on through 2026.
Well, that's fortunate.
After that,
I think it is. Yeah.
All things go out the window. So we don't even know what 2026 is going to look like. This company, like Immaculate's talking about, it might not even exist. They could reformat into a different company.
Yeah.
They could just have enough of Notre Dame shit and say, we're not giving Notre Dame a vote.
Let's hope that happens.
You have to be in a
it exists in the realm of possibilities.
Let's hope that happens.
I don't know how they do that, but especially if the
I think
pack
all
goes
four
away.
of us support that.
Maybe there is something in those bylaws that you're talking about that if
LSU stole their coach.
disappears, if a conference
All right.
disappears, they might have to reformulate.
Let's get to some good questions here. They've been very patient. I appreciate everybody being here. We're still at 130 people watching. So this has been a lively conversation. I hope everybody takes it in the spirit that it is. We're not telling you what to believe. We're giving you our opinions. This is an opinion show. So R. Webb, who's one of our members, says, as a Baylor guy, I can't blame SMU. They are trying to get in the autonomy door knowing it might be shutting forever. Is that how you feel, Charles?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's a lot that feel the same way. Yeah.
And I'm like you. I think there's about 10 or 12 that get in.
So right now, how many in the 5, if we still count the Pac-12, how many schools are quote unquote in the club? Do we know that number? Is it 69 or is it 71?
Oh, currently?
Yeah. Could somebody riddle that and give me the answer?
I've added it up before. You got to count Notre Dame.
No, it's basically you just count every single.
That's what I'm saying. No, I haven't done that. Do you guys know what that number is?
I have to redo it every time I do it.
Okay, don't worry about it. I'll curious.
I'll sit here and I'll count it up in my head while you guys.
Because that would tell us how many slots. If you believe
think including Notre Dame, it's 66. I think.
So if there's 66
I'm sorry. Hold on. I think it would be
69. So
69, including the Pac-4.
69.
Okay.
What's left of the Pac-4?
So that would leave, depending on what number we go to, either 72 or 75. That would leave 3 more slots or 6 more slots, right? And definitely SMU is on that list, right? But who gets in?
There's a lot of good teams all fighting for those limits. I really think
you need to quit talking about everybody else and just stick with Tulane and SMU.
Well, I think they are the best two.
Sure.
They are the best two. But there's some other really good teams with great markets, like USF, who has horrible viewership numbers. Right. But everybody agrees. Everybody remembers when the Bulls were up there, ranked number 2. We know they can do it. It's a giant school. It's in a great location.
Right.
I mean, and if FSU goes to the Big Ten or SEC, who do you want to replace them, right? Who's the replacement? Maybe FAU, but I think USF's ahead of FAU. Who's going to replace Clemson? Same deal. Horrible numbers, but showing a lot of promise. Coastal Carolina, they're a great replacement for Clemson. It's the best you're going to get.
So the other thing to look at it is if the A3 settles on 3 conferences of 60, that means 7 schools would be left, or six schools would be left out. That's not enough. And I'm not saying that's going to happen.
There's 133 total FBS schools.
Right.
133.
Right. Yeah, we know that.
We have more coming online. Isn't there a new conference forming, and they're drawing up? There's like 11 in the conference.
Probably
brand new G5 G6 conference.
It was there was 2 FCS conferences that had some of their schools in them that are football schools and some of them that are not. The football schools all kind of went, you know what, because they had like a scheduling agreement or something, but the football schools all came together to form their own conference with desire to make it up to FBS ranks as another G conference.
They filed to declare to become.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to take a certain vote through the
NCAA votes on that
to happen.
How? The whole body, the whole student body?
Honestly, I think what I read is it's all the Division I schools have to vote to, or Yeah, no, all the FBS schools will have to vote to allow them. Basically, the people who would have to vote for it are the ones that you want to join. So I think the likelihood of it happening is probably not as good as they wanted.
Is it a majority
We'll see.
vote or is it a super
I don't
majority?
know. I don't know.
It's
So-
That comes down to
133 votes.
The problem is, again, there's this stratification that has been in the system for a long, long time. We're not arguing whether that's good or bad. I personally think the stratification sucks
I do
because
too.
my school was kept out for almost 50 years. So yeah, I'm not happy about it either. But at the end of the day, the organizations are what's driving this. It's not the individual schools, unless you're Ohio State. And between those schools that have the power, they're going to want to keep that as concentrated in the smallest number that they can to control the whole shooting match. If they get together through this negotiation that's going to start for 2026, and they decide together as a mafia, and they decide in these 3 or 4 families that they're going to limit access, which I believe would be against the law. If they did that, then that collaboration could end up at a number that we don't even know yet. But does anybody here believe it's going to go past 75? I don't think so.
I think it goes to like 80. It's 83
Yeah.
or 85.
They're not going to want to share that much money, Charles.
Am I talking like, if I'm talking 3 conferences, then 75 is what I've been saying. If you're talking 4 or more, like if somehow the ACC finds a way, then it would be more than that. But I would agree with you that 75 is the cap if we're talking about 3 P conferences, whether we want to call them A's, but
A conferences, yeah. That's
A's. I'm saying ACC probably stays as an A. They're going to maintain their autonomy status, but they're not going to maintain the same perceived status as like a power conference. But they will still be an autonomy conference with autonomy votes. It gets difficult and complex, but
an automatic qualifier.
Well, that's a different conversation.
I mean,
Let's not get into.
We don't know that yet. Like that, so much of that's going to change.
They're really going to get integrated, I think. I mean, maybe not, but
I'm at 68. I think 68 teams is where we end up. 3
and I think that's very reasonable.
Where we are now, or where they end up.
Where they end up, you get 2 conferences of 24 and 1 conference of 20.
68 sounds good to me. If you could pull it off so the Big 12 only stays at 20.
It's going to go to 24. It's going to have to be that 24.
The SEC would be the 16.
I didn't agree with Moen, but I could see what we're seeing happen with the ACC and the other three main conferences that will be pulling from it, that the SEC might only go to 20 with 4 ACC schools and say, that's it. Like, I didn't believe that at first, but the way this is starting to play out, the agreement that would have to be made for the schools to backfill, like we've been talking here. So the number of schools that the SEC would have to take in like kind of a lump sum, it might only be 4, and then that might be it. And that's actually good for what we're talking about here if SMU makes it into the ACC, because that's less teams going out. Like, will the Big 12, will they go past taking 4 ACC schools at that point? Will they just sit at 20? With it, Washington State, Oregon State, and then maybe 2 more, like a San Diego State or who knows, whatever. But I think he might be right. SEC might not go as big as everyone else.
They don't have to, and they want to stay contiguous. They said that over and over and over again.
And getting too many in that small little footprint might, too many.
They start cannibalizing their own viewers. That's possible.
Yeah.
Let's get to some more. Has talked about wanting to be in 4 time zones, and the Big Ten wants to be in Florida and other places. They want to run an NFL type model where you're going to have 4 divisions. So that's where ultimately I see it ending up. I don't know who gets left behind.
68, I think, is a good number. We'll just have, I think a lot of that depends on what happens with the ACC. So let's see here. Justin Lucas, thanks for being here, Justin. Appreciate it. He says the SMU 247 message board, so this is going to be to you, Charles, said that Rick Hart had canceled his travel for Monday, but I have no idea whether that's true or if it's true, whether it's connected to realignment. Can you inform who is Rick? What's his name? Rick Hart.
I don't even know.
Okay. All right. Is he the AD for SMU maybe?
He might be.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Greg Swaim says, are you getting a few gray hairs? Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you reminding me that I am aging.
Who is Rick Hall?
Let's see. Here's another SMU question. If SMU wants to get into the Big 12, they will need to connect with millions of Methodists in the United States and internationally. They need to build their brand with religion. That's from DF Ost. Charles, do you have a comment on that?
I've seen somebody else say that. It may have been him before. Basically follow the BYU model.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
that's a
and
good
the
idea.
Notre Dame model too. Yep.
I thought SMU pulled away
Notre
from the faith stuff, though.
They are, well, they're not officially. They officially severed the connection, but it's still a loose connection. It's still
Okay.
Southern Methodist University,
Okay.
but the church doesn't run it. I don't think anymore.
Very good. If you're just joining the show, please subscribe. Follow these guys on Twitter. All their names are in the profile. When the comments are down, you'll see that. Immaculate and Moen are permanent parts of this channel, and I really appreciate the feedback that they provide. I highly encourage everybody to look them up, Moen Sports and Immaculate View on Twitter. And then Charles, his name is on there. And great. This has been a great show, actually. If you're just new to the channel, subscribe. And then if you want your comment to be a guaranteed read, it'll have to be a super chat. I'll try to get through these as I can, but there's a bunch of member comments I need to get to. Yeah, anyway, let's get off of that.
Yeah,
let's see.
I don't even know. Rick Hart is the AD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe his trip meant something. We're not sure. Let's see. DeReal MVP says, Conundrum, who's in the channel, you're right. I can't believe Stanford and Cal would go to the ACC for free, but I guess desperate times call for desperate measures.
Does
anybody disagree with that?
We haven't heard about Cal wanting to do this. We've heard about SMU and we've heard about Stanford, but conveniently Cal has been left out of talk about paying that. So I'm guessing that they cannot afford to, and they would probably come in with Stanford and quietly get a payment of some variety, but they'll still get their $10 million from UCLA.
Fair enough. Devil Frog says, Baylor, BYU, Rice, USC, SMU, Stanford, TCU, Tulane, Tulsa are the only private FBS schools west of the Mississippi. All great schools. And thank you, Devil. Devil's one of the original mafioso. And that's what you were talking about earlier, Charles, right? All the private schools getting together and forming a private
TCU
league.
And Baylor.
Yeah, I think that's very.
Last night I was doing a little research on endowment sizes and student body sizes, looking at comparing TCU to SMU. They're like within 100 students of each other. That's how similar they are.
Wow.
SMU has had a very big, it's smaller than Rice's, but in the state it was like the second largest endowment. But now I was shocked to learn last night that Baylor and TCU both now have bigger endowments than SMU. Both are over $2 billion. That just came out of nowhere.
We did a whole study on what the endowments and the research grants and those type of things on several shows in July. You might look back at those if you're new to the channel. Those are all recorded, and you can go back and see. We did a really in-depth study on these different schools and where they are when it comes to endowments and their research.
Well, TCU and Baylor both climbed in the academic rankings by all these, which I've done a study of them, but in order to advise my children on selection of college, and ended up throwing them all out and doing my own based solely on first-year income by major. And it changed the result tremendously. It was surprising.
But just a quick comment on these. USC has an enrollment of around 44,000. So I don't really think of them in the same way as I do the rest of these. Even though they are a private, they're built more like a big, large public. So I don't see them ever want to do this. But it's an interesting list and a possibility for the future.
Take a look at Liberty.
BYU has 36,000.
Liberty is a fast riser.
It's like 90,000.
BYU has 36,000 undergrad. So
and that's another one too, you
Yeah.
could say. I don't see BYU joining that because they're more of a national brand.
Yeah. DF Austin, another comment. I think SMU could be a great representative of the Methodist Church if they chose to go there. BYU, Baylor, Notre Dame are all good. Sorry, others all bring religious fans to sports, and I don't
we
think
got the
that's
Methodists playing the Catholics.
Hey man, I'm looking forward to BYU playing Baylor and TCU. I would love that to be in every year. I would
Not
look
just the
forward to
Holy
that.
War, but the Holy Wars. Right?
That we actually had one, and I wrote it down. I can't remember the name, but it was really, really good about those three schools. Anyway, Greg, thanks for being here, Greg. Love it. SMU has some very wealthy alumni, and they certainly shown over the years they'll do everything. Yeah, the Pony Express, 30 for 30. I think probably everybody's seen that. Half-filled homes certainly don't help. So home games, check that.
I have
half-filled
just
home games.
Note. One of my old roommates, after I went through a divorce, and I had a friend of mine live with me for a short while to rent a room, and he's one of the three guys they interview on that Pony Excess. He's one of three players that was on the SMU team before the death penalty, stayed at SMU during the death penalty, and he played on the team after the death penalty. So there was only three people. He was one of them that was on the team before and after the death penalty. And anyway, that 30 for 30 is supposed to be real interesting.
It's fantastic. It's great viewing for sure. David Floyd, thanks for being here, David. I still want Call and Stanford, Cal, I'm guessing, and Stanford in the Big 12. Big 12 schools rubbing shoulders with the Stanford and Cal would piss off some A&M and Texas fans, I guess. Does that mean anything to you guys?
I don't know. I don't see why that would really affect Texas and A&M.
Okay. Yeah, it was Cal and Stanford.
Yeah, the cultural clash would be interesting. I mean, the woke versus the anti-woke. God,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear Stanford is willing to spend whatever it takes to get into a conference that they feel is more culturally acceptable to them. I think that they would come into the Big 12, and a lot of Big 12 people would be like, "Oh, you're in our world now." And I don't think Stanford wants to face that because
no, they don't want it. They'll never join.
That's not a conference they want anything to do with.
They've got Condi Rice, advocating for them now.
Yeah,
she's right wing red as they come.
And when you get to the top, they're actually kind of the same.
Yeah, I think, as we said before, I don't think they go anywhere. I think they're going to have to try to do something with the pack.
Right.
As it
I
is.
mean, Stanford's going to have to bend the knee on their IPLCC status and join the Big Ten academic. If they were going for free, the Big Ten would take them for free, but they're going to have to join the Academic Alliance. And apparently that's a threshold that Stanford won't cross. And I think that's probably what keeps them out of the Big 12. Stanford will end up being independent. They're going to try.
And I could see that absolutely happening.
And then Cal will do whatever it can to get into the Big Ten.
I looked at this, Moen, after listening to you and some other people talking about this subject. I did a little research and found an accounting with a listing of all the schools with ranked in order of research and development expenditures. Number one on the list was Johns Hopkins. And
sorry, I was thinking of the conferences. Sorry,
but Stanford is not. It isn't so large that they really should want to not share. In fact, there may be benefits where the amalgamate might be more valuable. I don't know. Just maybe they like having the control, but
Stanford does share just with a different group.
Right.
They share with the Ivy Plus Libraries Confederation and not the Big Ten Academic Alliance. And in order to shift from one to the other, it would be a very large process of shifting all that information. Plus, when you have shared research between different schools, they have your research, your IP that they're using in their research. They have to slowly start to pull that out. Like so actual research processes going on have to start wrapping up because information that they're using on it came from, say, Stanford. And so if they're pulling out of that library, When
So-
the University of Chicago did this in 2013 to 2016, that's how long it took for them to pull out of the BTAA and fully immerse into the IPLC. So it's not a small process.
Let me share our research thing since we're talking about it. And I need to get over here, sorry. So when we're talking about research spending, by the way, Wild Ute put this together, incredible graphics. But if we're talking about in spending in the 2000s, this is where your research spending is at. Washington is number one. Johns Hopkins isn't on the list because we were talking about the Power 5 conferences. But Washington is actually more than Stanford is, which is ironic because Stanford is the one that's driving the academic excellence and sort of standoffishness with sharing their data. So if you want to go and look to see where the private schools are, look where BYU, BU, and TCU are at, way at the other end of the scale. Now, they put money into different things. They don't put it into the research. They put it into other endeavors. BYU has huge endowments that go to service, for instance. There's a bunch of money they do. Anyways, so that wouldn't show up on here. So the private schools I would completely cut out of this list. But if we look here at the expansion candidates, SMU is just like BYU, TCU, and Baylor.
Right.
But they're private schools, right? So they're not really rated on the same level. So that just gives you an idea of kind of where that goes. Tulane, you see, is actually quite high compared.
Yeah.
So, the data is out there. You just have to collect it and sort of put it together. So tip my hat to Wild Ute for doing that. That was a really good. Do you guys have any questions on that before I get off of it?
Oh,
Did he fold in the Ivy League to compare them?
No, that wasn't part of the measurement. No. Really approachable data though. All right, let's see more comments. I'm gonna do this. Since we have a little bit of time, we've had a lot of people involved in the comments. I'm gonna post this to everybody. If you want to join the show, click on that hyperlink I just put in the comment section, and come ask your question. There's a lot of people that have opinions. We're over 800 comments right now, so I know people care. No matter if you want to really get your point out, either make it a super chat, which is cool, or you can join the show by clicking that link. What's this one right here? Can you answer this one, Immaculate? Bomber, can you count 7 schools as a no vote in the ACC, the 2 Carolina schools to Virginia schools, Florida State, Clemson, I believe Miami is on the no vote list too. Are those the only ones that we think are holding out now?
Well, to premise, I know people think that because there was 4 stated no votes, that's all there is. Personally, but we've also seen other leaks come out like the Magnificent Seven, which UNCAD Bubba came out on an interview and said that actually existed, but he didn't like the name of it because it implied like it was some type of organized group inside, and it's not. And he said there was actually more than 7 schools that took part in the talks about how to basically get by the gore. So if we were to take that and kind of transpose that on top of this situation and say that these are schools that, even if they don't vote no, actually have the same alignment. So what I would say is the 4 that we know: Miami, Virginia Tech, probably Virginia. Go so far as to even say Louisville, because I think Louisville is a lock for the Big 12. And if all these schools are leaving at some point in time, I think Louisville would be out as well. So I would put Louisville 2 as a vote. So I think you're at least at 8, if not more.
Excellent. Thanks for
What
running
about
that
Georgia
down.
Tech? I think
I'm all over the place on them. Like, do they have a place in the Big 10? It's questionable. Are they one of the left behinds in the ACC that might have to be part of that type of elite type of university conference? That's also possible. So I could see Georgia Tech actually being a yes vote.
they had surprisingly good viewership numbers last year in 2020.
I don't think it's a coincidence that they're ready to drop that particular offense in terms of you have to run this as a coach. I think that's very much a way to try and become more relevant going higher.
So Cougar Tracks is hoping that the Big 12 is finished adding teams for a while. I've said on Twitter, and I've been saying it for several weeks now, the only way that it changes, in my opinion, is if Cal and Stanford end up somewhere and Washington State and Oregon State come in as a package. Now, Bob Thompson said there may not be a lot of value to the current Pac-12 network, which I found really interesting. Did you guys see those several tweets from him about people are asking, I think probably based on the tweet I put out, that the Pac-12 could be folded in and be part of the Big 12 network if they wanted to start one. Bob didn't necessarily think that. What do you guys think?
What did he say? I didn't see. I saw your tweet, but not his.
Yeah, his tweet basically says that the ones that are currently signed up, the distributors signed up for the Pac-12 network, aren't necessarily going to want the Big 12 network. They wouldn't want to cover the schools. Somebody said they want.
Maybe Swaim said they want out. I may have seen.
It was
one out. What do you mean?
That the distributors would just soon drop it and
that's what Bob's contention was.
Maybe I didn't see Bob's.
Yeah.
It was somebody. I saw it summarized, I guess.
Anyway.
Yeah. He basically he explained it, but sometimes Bob goes into this talk of where he very much has knowledge about the situation and talks in his language about it. And so when I read it, I was like, okay, I kind of get it, but I'm just going to be like,
what
it's
does that
Bob.
mean?
He's saying this. Yeah. But basically the point is that these networks are kind of an old thing, and that the cable companies are going to fight tooth and nail to give any more for them. And somehow by changing the network from being the PAC network to being a Big 12 network, that would get them out of their contractual agreements on it, and that on any type of new agreement on it, they would fight. So like if, say, the Big 12 wanted to take it in and use it as a Big 12 network, whatever Pac-12 network agreements were there, like the rebranding and the re-ownership of it would allow those cable companies to not go by the old contracts. Take that or leave that for what it is. It's kind of like, okay, I'm trying to understand Bob here because he's very concise about that because he knows all about it. So,
well, if you're talking about physical plant and facilities, part of them are school specific.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have built
fiber to every
right at a school, and then they're networked. So there's many facets to that whole deal, and then there's the contracts for the broadcast with the various cable companies, and those too are probably tied to the school. Where so I can see where if the school that's connected with it's going somewhere else, then it's not you've lost a big node on your network.
I think his contention is they'll just sell it rather than trying to repurpose it, do new contracts, sell it. Get the money out of it and move along. So we'll have to see about Oregon State and Washington State. They could be in 2 or 3 different destinations, but
Why isn't YouTube involved?
You're asking us?
Yeah,
we don't know.
They dropped a bunch of money on the NFL ticket,
That's true.
Sunday ticket. So
that's true.
Good call.
They're involved in sports. They're getting in there. So wouldn't shock me to see them become a 4th partner for the Big Ten either.
Craig Hirsch, this is a fact. You can comment on it if you'd like to, but he says SDSU still has 10,000 tickets available for their opener. Looks like 22,000 tops. Look, San Diego State has blown this realignment thing so poorly. They did everything wrong, from talking about they had a destination regardless of who wins, to talking about what their value is. They want to leave, and then they decided to come back. And now you're seeing that they're not selling out their tickets. I think that school has some serious administrative issues to work through.
I don't disagree, but this was their best year to do it with the basketball tournament.
Right.
This was the highest profile San Diego State was ever going to be. So I can't blame them for taking their shot. But obviously, yes, they should have waited and just let the PAC figure out the pack before jumping out of it. But I don't blame them for taking their shot any more than I would blame SMU for cutting that check. You take your shot when you got the best shot available.
Right. Immaculate, you wanted to say something?
Real quick, I look at San Diego State as a destination spot. Like, we want our team to go there and play because it's kind of like here in Arizona. There's a lot of people in San Diego that are not from there and don't give a damn about California sports. And people sometimes will go on a trip based around a game.
Exactly.
And San Diego has a lot to do there. I mean, Arizona people here flood into that place. So I like them as a last round pick. Like, we need to round out a division. We need to round out something or another. They have a good looking stadium. It'll look good on TV. It's probably not going to be filled fully with San Diego State fans, but maybe some of those people will come out of the woodwork if they're in a bigger conference playing bigger names. I don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Isn't that like one of it's the most normal school in California that's still a good school, but normal people get in there that aren't eggheads. It's in a great spot. Same with kind of maybe San Jose State, which is another up and coming. It's a future San Diego State, and they're a fast riser. I would keep my eye on San Jose State. That is probably the best school in the Cal State group of schools, followed by San Diego State, and both of them they're nipping at the heels academically of the California network schools.
Sorry.
I just see San Diego State being more valuable than just the last team in. Kind of like UConn, I think. Both of them. UConn actually is ranked one spot above San Diego, and above both of them is Ohio, of all schools, in terms of viewership, eyeballs. And then on top of those three is Fresno. Fresno's number 10 in the G5. If you ignore the service schools, Fresno's the 10th ranked team. UConn, that's gotten all this press, is the 12th ranked team. And San Diego State, who's gotten all this press, is the 13th best school in terms of.
It's not about.
Those are all good stats, and let you take over. But the point is, they didn't get in, and they were mostly just talked about as a kind of like a threat. Like, if you guys don't join us, we're going to just fill up our spots with these. But they didn't get in with it. And Yormark even came out and said that our dream expansion was the Four Corners.
Right, I saw
it wasn't. So when I'm saying last spot in, I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm just trying to look at it in a realistic view of they could still have enough value to get in, but it's just going to be at the end when all of the P5 reshuffle and consolidation is over.
Well,
so I know.
Let's move on. Let's move on. If they had value, this is bottom line. If they had that much value, they'd be in a conference. So we can talk about what their requisite values may be, but UConn is an ESPN backyard. They would get in because of ESPN. San Diego State, Southern California. They're not going to get in because they're a valuable school. They come in because of their location. SMU is valuable because they have a lot of money. So it doesn't have anything to do with that top
location.
16.
Yeah.
But you get my point.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with viewership numbers, as you know, it's about brand, rivalries, rabid fan bases. Those are the tenets that Bob laid out, and I still think they apply. DFOS says, as a BYU fan, I'm interested in many religious schools in the Big 12 in order to advance our international efforts and as a strategic advantage of loyal fan bases to maintain unity. That is the strength of the Big 12. They've gone all in to leverage those relationships. And I think they're number three. We all, at least three of us think they're the third one anyway. Sergeant Pickles is here. Good to see you, Sergeant Pickles. Since you were the next member comment, I came across this. I appreciate you being here. Coming to you live from break at work. Gotta love that. Overtime. Nice. While you're on the show, you're getting overtime. If you want your comment to be read, we got about 12 minutes. You can make it a super chat, or you can become a member, and I'm reading member comments right now just because we have so many. Summit Hawk, another member of the family here. If both SEC and Big come after more Big 12 schools at the end of 2030, then TCU could move to the Big 12. What?
I
Probably
think he
meant
ca-
Big
I-
Ten.
I think he meant Big Ten.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, schools could go anywhere. I mean, anything's possible.
It's it comes down to that exit fee. Now it looks like it's going to be pretty big coming out of the Big 12. So I don't see them taking a lot of Big 12 schools. If they take one, it would be like a precise need or something that'd be worth helping that school out, because that cost is going to be considerable from what Yormark has said.
Oklahoma State, I think, is the only one that is clearly. I think the SEC may still want them.
Kansas is still an option
Yeah,
as well.
both the
As-
Kansas.
As an Iowa guy, I would love to see Kansas come into the Big Ten, but
Yeah, I
that's
think-
my absolute bias.
That's down the road a ways.
Right.
I'm
I'm not
believing.
Yeah. really kind of going into that now because it's too far down the road.
maybe
Uh,
West Virginia, maybe. But
Yeah, location again. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Summit Hawk says, as long as it's done before 2026, then ACC mass exodus happens. Quite possible. We're not dealing in absolutes here. So
But when we talk 2026, you got to talk about how long it takes to actually plan for 2026, which means 2024, because you have to know these lineups and
Right.
what power certain conferences end up having, who's going to be there, that type of
yeah,
stuff.
if it's going to happen for then, it's going to happen right now.
our web, one of our members says, okay, I hate to be that guy, but if this dude thinks Cal and UNC are equal athletic brands, then he can't be helped. What do you say to that?
Wait, I
Charles?
hate to be that guy that's Cal equal. In terms of eyeballs, money, dollars in your pocket. Eyeballs translate to media dollars, which is at least half these schools' budgets. I wasn't talking about their performance on the field.
What, as far as the two schools, what's the biggest difference between them? It's geography. You put the UNC on the West Coast.
I said they were equivalent from a viewership standpoint.
I'm only talking. The one thing that's different is the location of the schools. One's in California.
I hate to be the guy that if this dude thinks Cal and UNC, I'm sorry. If you look at the numbers, they're right next to each other. So I can prove it. And yours is opinion. Mine's a matter of statistical numbers. I can prove my viewpoint. You can't prove yours.
What is the? Can you tell everybody what the premise is that you're talking about?
Eyeballs, viewership in 2022, regular football season, average media viewership per game, per regular season game. If you take the average viewership per game for all 133 schools, not all of them registered, believe it or not. There's like 14 schools that aren't reporting, but there's like 118 or 19 that got reported, listed, and you can rank them based on their average per game, regular season game viewership. If you rank them in order, Cal sits on top of UNC, who sits on top of Stanford. They're ranked right there together. They are viewership from a media property standpoint. They are equivalents.
So what we've talked about around here, though, is you might have equal viewership numbers, but because their geography is different, they're valued differently.
Time zones are different.
Yeah, so
but
that makes a huge difference.
Now,
so you talk about, but if you talk about the value of the schools, you have to put them in context. And that context is their different geography, right?
Okay. So if you move a Cal who has equal viewership now, and you're instead of playing in the fourth time zone, you're playing in the more valuable first time zone.
Right.
Now suddenly who's more valuable? You've just moved Cal, who's got equal numbers, equal viewership numbers, to a more valuable time window to play games in the ACC. So what do you expect to happen to Cal's numbers versus UNC's numbers? Who do you expect to have bigger numbers?
You take a school on the West Coast and you put it in the same time slot in a Saturday as an East Coast team. The East Coast team is going to draw more numbers. And that's what killed the Pac-12.
That's right. And that's why you're moving to the ACC.
But
so you
moving
play it the first time.
Just changing conferences doesn't change the demographics of where your school's at.
It changes your time zone that you're playing in.
They're not going to play at noon Eastern.
Yeah, they're
on
going
a
to
They
regular
are if you're
basis.
playing Virginia.
That's 9-8. No,
They
but
are
that's
if you're playing North Carolina. They are if
that's
you're playing
one
Miami.
game.
What?
We're talking about one game though, not the entire.
But if
Because
you're
there's
just
6
two
games that are going to
schools,
be
you're
at
going to be
home.
playing. You're going to be playing almost all your games on the East Coast.
No.
If you're 4 schools, you're still going to be playing half your games on the or more, 2/3 of your games on the East Coast. You've suddenly made your property more valuable because you're playing in a first time window.
Okay,
That's why the Big Ten got the big contract, because they went out and they got a devalued, undervalued USC and UCLA, and they moved them into their central and eastern centric conference and made them more valuable. You buy low, you sell high. And that's what they did, and they got a big contract because of it. They got a big reward because of it. And the ACC has the opportunity to do. They're idiots for not doing this. If they don't take, I hate Cal, but if they don't take Cal and Stanford, and really all 4 of them, they're idiots. They're complete idiots, and they deserve to fail.
The words you just said, Charles, we said about the Pac-12. If they don't take
SMU
and San Diego,
and they failed.
Okay, but there's a reason they failed. That's what I'm trying to get down to.
They wouldn't expand when they had to. They didn't see the handwriting on the wall.
Everybody
is in the same boat right now.
Everybody told them to pick up SMU for the Central Time Zone. Everybody told them to take San Diego State for Southern California.
Just froze.
And just graduating them into the conference wasn't going to be enough. So just putting Cal in the ACC by itself is not necessarily going to make Cal any more valuable. Now the conference may be more valuable because you're gonna get teams that are gonna come to the West Coast, but that doesn't necessarily mean it translates to the school.
And one thing to remember is Cal is not going to get an invite to the SEC. UNC could get an invite to the SEC, and by doing so, their numbers will considerably rise. My opinion. We're kind of having a chat with some folks in chat about that. And so while I'm not going to dispute your numbers, I'm pretty sure there's probably some ratings that show exactly what you're saying. I still say UNC has more potential because of their ability to make that move, which will get them higher ratings. I think UNC gets really good ratings in the SEC. I just think that they haven't really engaged people to pay attention to them while they're in the ACC.
So, immaculate, Brian, what you're saying is UNC could be more valuable, and probably is more valuable in the SEC than they are in the ACC.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so could Cal not be more valuable in the ACC?
To a degree, yes. I wouldn't say that the increase is the same, but you're not wrong in your premise that they are going to increase because of the Eastern coverage. That's why the Pac was kind of not just torn apart, but also giving places to go to. That's why these networks paid more to the Big 12 and to the Big 10 to take them in, is because those brands will be made better by going into Eastern markets. But I'm not saying that you're wrong with anything you're saying. You're not. I'm just saying the added element to that is UNC getting raised up. And there's the cat again. UNC getting yeah, she loves to hang out here when I'm talking. So UNC basically is just going to get an improved value by moving up again. So that's all I'm saying.
Sergeant Pickles has got a comment. He's a member. It says ACC is better off by adding SMU, USF, Memphis, and ECU, knowing at least 4 are gone in the future, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about hedging your bets by adding schools.
Do it now. Do it now.
The only example I can come up with, and that I refute all these proposed things, is we did just see the Pac-12 go through it. We saw this story, and the Pac-12 was not able to make all those numbers work. So if it was that easy, just to add people and you'll be protected, the Pac-12 would still be around.
But the ACC has a pro rata clause. I mean, this insurance cost them nothing. Their survival cost them nothing.
Well,
it's to take out the insurance policy by adding the teams. It's a no-brainer.
Schools that are there,
it's a no-brainer that the rest of these teams may have a lawsuit against these teams that are wanting to leave by holding up the expansion. If there's going to be a lawsuit over the death of the Pac-12. I guarantee you. This isn't over.
Well,
That's another reason. That's another reason why the media companies need to encourage that these schools find a home, and the Big Ten needs to. They need to pay. The Big Ten and the media companies need to pay the Big 12 to take these schools off their hands, or pay the ACC to take these schools off their hands, and to eliminate or manage their liability risk for destroying the conference. And you got the same thing brewing in the ACC. And these 4 schools, FSU and Clemson, are treading on thin water. And any conference, that's why they don't have an invite to the SEC, and that's why they don't have an invite to the Big Ten, because they're worried. They want this handled by agreement, not by litigation. It just opens Pandora's box. This is my view from a lawyer's perspective. Handle it by agreement. And I think they can, if they come together with $1 billion right now, I think they get out and they add these teams and they get on down the road, and the ACC survives. And suddenly you've got 4 conferences at 20 each. That's 80 teams surviving. And the Pac, the Pac should go away and become part of the ACC. But if they don't, they're going to survive too. And now you really got a bunch of teams. You still have an A5. You still have a P5, because they're going to combine. They're looking at combining with the Pac-4. They're looking at combining the very best of the Mountain West and the very best of the AAC, and that is a power conference.
Well,
that is going to be an autonomous conference.
So it'll be autonomous today.
Yeah.
In 2026, all bets are off.
Okay. So what document? Show me what document and the votes. Show me how you get the votes to eliminate their power. Can you tell me how that? Where do the people that are eliminating their power get their power from?
Great question. Why does Notre Dame have a vote? Why does Notre Dame have a vote that is equal to the Big 12s?
If the whole thing sunsets, we're starting all over anyway, right?
Yeah, I think if these solutions sound very simple on our show right here, but if they were that simple, I think they would have already been done.
I think what we're getting at from what he's trying to say is that if the Pac-12 is allowed to die, you're saying the college football playoff company also possibly has a big problem with continuing to exist.
I think it might be reorganized.
So that has to be remade.
Yeah, what I'm proposing is that they redo it.
Yeah, it'd have to be reconstituted.
A court may redo it. A court may dissolve it and say, "You guys go your separate ways."
Maybe that is absolutely a possibility. That's right.
And that's out of our realm of being able to predict at this point in time. That's one of those.
There's somebody in a room having this discussion that has the power to do something about it.
Yeah, that's not the type of stuff that gets leaked out by.
If we knew, we'd be extremely wealthy right now, because we could sell that information for lots of money. So. Let's see here. Let me get some more member comments. Boy, so many comments. This has been awesome, guys. And let's be very clear. The stuff we're talking about are all maybes and could be's. Nobody here is saying this is exactly what's going to happen. But at least on my show, I want to hear as many opinions as possible, which is why Charles is here. These are things that they need to be discovered. And I think they're really important, and we shouldn't forget about them.
Yeah, everything I say is my opinion based on, even though I said I do have numbers to back up what I said about UNC and Cal.
I don't think anybody's
But
beyond
that,
at all.
beyond what I told you, I don't have. It's all opinion.
Right.
Gut. I mean, it's educated gut, but it's still a gut opinion subject.
Moen fell asleep. That's what you're saying, Immaculate.
You can hear him snoring.
No, I'm teasing.
No.
He's not being very chatty today.
I'm letting you guys carry it. I'm just gonna let you do that.
I'm just waiting for Moen to come in and just smack us all down in that Moen kind of way.
I've got here's where we work on a case together that fall asleep in their books.
Here's a good question. Go Black 45 says there just needs to be a bowl the night before the national championship between SMU and SDSU to see who gets the P4 invite. That might get bigger ratings than anybody else.
No shit.
That's funny.
That's great. That's something
funny.
Yormark would come up with.
Yeah,
the Big 12 could sponsor it. Say whoever wins this game gets the last spot.
Anything is possible.
Dude, it sounds so crazy, but I'm sitting here saying, Yeah,
like
it would
Did you
be.
watch that game?
The Hunger Games.
I
It'd be the
can't
Hunger
argue the
Games.
value of it. I can't argue that it would draw. Like you could, like I don't care. Sorry, I don't really care about SMU or SDSU,
He
but
says it might draw bigger rating. I think
I'd
it
watch
will draw.
that game just to see
It's
the
all
ending.
on the line. And
Here's
not only
the-
that, you got to put your money up to play in the game. How about that?
Oh,
It
then
costs you
SDSU is
$30 million
screwed.
to play in
So
this game.
So
Yeah,
Nick,
you guys
Nick
win
M
at the bet.
Nick M has a comment. Nobody in the Big 12 is afraid of SMU dominating the Big 12. SMU bought players and bought a championship. SMU brings no value to the Big 12. The SMU guy is spouting asinine SMU red ass.
Remember,
So there you go.
we
There you
take
go, Charles.
We
Red
take shots here, Charles.
There you go, Charles.
Okay. You know,
Where do you begin?
Right.
you don't even need to respond. The whole thing's idiotic. So the
You
whole
guys
thing-
can go on Twitter and chat that out. I'm not going to do that.
I got to
right
figure
now.
out what red ass is.
I don't know.
Never heard that used.
That's
I
pretty
think it's
funny.
the opposite of a blue ass or something.
Yeah,
Okay,
Mike
well.
Rayner, who's also a member, says, "Good show, guys." Maybe he had to leave. I'm enjoying it. Sorry, two-parter. I'm enjoying it. Thank you for being here, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you for being a member of the show. Now, there's some comments. There's so many freaking comments. I need to go to the bottom. I need to scroll the opposite direction because I'm getting a bunch of member comments and then they're all at the bottom. So let's see here. There were a couple I wanted to get to really quick. Let's see. Sticky Sports says I'm spreading propaganda. Yeah, maybe. You can put that in the back of my head.
Propaganda.
I do have strong opinions. I'll say that. Let's see here. Our Webb, who's one of the members, says UNC will get to choose between the SEC and Big. Cal, in comparison, will not. That's a good way to relate to it. That's a good way to relate to it for values.
My point is, I think Cal and Stanford are good replacements for NC State and UNC. I think they at least equally replace them. The irreplaceable are going to be Clemson and FSU. You're just not going to be able to replace them unless you do what the Big 12 did, was replace them with numbers. But then you're going to have a dilutive effect due to the increased number, but you're just not going to get around that. But if the ACC is going to survive like the Big 12, we already know the Big 12 is going to survive. It's a question of, are they going to be, where are they going to be, and are they going to have peers?
Right.
And the pack is not dead yet. They're not dead. And if the ACC doesn't kill them, the pack may kill the ACC by taking all their expansion alternatives. Because
all right.
Can I, real quick, the thing about
yeah.
the pack is that they don't have a deal. No one is going to go running in there and want to be in a situation where you have to work out a deal in less than a year. Like, as a lawyer, you realize, like, that's a really bad situation to jump into. And then if you have to pay exit fees to go in the very next year, the cost, not knowing what you're getting, I just don't see it happening.
you don't
Blake,
think Apple would fund that?
No, we don't have time to get into that. That's a different show.
That's a whole
Charles,
show, but
it's a different show.
Great.
Blake
It's
has a comment. I thought if the ACC added schools, that voided the GOR. Didn't we talk about that a couple weeks ago, Mullen?
Yeah, it doesn't void the GOR.
It doesn't.
They just get added to the GOR. Yeah.
That's what I think we reported a couple weeks ago. Let's see our web. Again, these are all member comments. If you want your comment to be read and you're not a member, please make it a super chat. Otherwise, we're just going to cruise through these and we'll burn this thing down. Our web says the pro rata is a double-edged sword in that if you abuse it, the media companies will remember, which is why the Big 12 didn't take BYU in 2016. That is the reason why the Big 12 didn't go to 18 with Washington State and Oregon State. I think that's true, our web, but I think there is an option if Cal and Stanford go. I do believe there's an opportunity there to scoop the.
They're the gatekeepers. They're saying yes or no. We will fund this or we will not. They are. I mean, the schools and the conferences have a say so, absolutely. But the media companies, they're the ones writing the checks, and they'll say, we will pay for this or we won't pay for this. I have a theory about the Pac-12 canceling their games in 2020 prematurely and not playing ball. And I I think they just killed them as a result of the way they handled things in 2020. I think there was a last in a whole series of stuff like that, but that was the last straw when they did that. And they probably told them, we're going to kill you in 2 years. Your contract's up and your conference is going away. I guarantee you that's what happened.
All right. We don't know.
They needed to be
I don't know if
killed.
they directly
I
say
don't
it.
know if that's
their
true.
actions may show that, but I don't think that they would.
Yeah,
have
I
said
don't think that can
directly.
be. We can't prove
That's
that.
my conspiracy theory. all
Okay,
right?
there
All
you go.
good,
Thank
all
you.
good.
That's good.
I have
Sticky-
plenty of my own.
Sticky Sports says, question for Charles: since ESPN offered $30 million per team to the Pac-12 last year, why would they be exposed to a lawsuit about breaking up the conference?
Because they manipulated everything behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's
exactly how I'm
another
talking
conspiracy.
Well,
I think there's a
Rick,
lot of
you
that
should
at
know
San Diego
this.
State and SMU.
I heard a mowing.
you should know this, Charles. It's not what you know; it's what you can prove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prove it. in
Otherwise,
court.
you have alliances that work out, right? We all
Man,
know how
I
alliances
love,
work.
and there's a lot you can prove with innuendo. You don't have to have a whole lot. You got to have some facts, but the jury can fill in the blanks with the known facts.
Yeah. Has
I
there
think
been a
there's
lawsuit? Has there
there's
been a lawsuit
exposure
on
here.
realignment? Has there been a lawsuit on realignment that's ever stopped realignment? I have never heard of it. Has there been a realignment lawsuit that has ever blocked changing of teams to different conferences? No.
I think it's blocking progress right now. Fear of liability is
But you're
is
saying
blocking.
you're making
Forward
making a legal
State
argument. I'm
and
saying it's
Clemson
never
right now.
happened. Charles,
But
I'm
the
saying it's never
difference is-
happened.
Yeah, the PAC's gore was up next year.
Yeah,
the ACC's
it was over.
gore's up is in 2036.
Right.
So there's a big difference from people taking schools from the PAC versus going after schools from the ACC.
Yeah, but tortious interference doesn't care about that. I mean,
There's been all the last year of Twitter. That was discussed. How many times was there an accusation that the Big 12 was consorting with these other conferences to kill the Pac-12 with ESPN?
oh, I'm sure a
And
lot.
yet, but a lot of people said it, but it hasn't happened.
Oh, you're saying it
And
didn't
even if
stop
they
it-
made an
didn't stop it
accusation,
from
doesn't
happening.
mean they'll win it.
No, but you're going to clean it up after the fact, and there's going to be cleanup.
Mhm.
If they find a home, and the thing is you got to have an injury. If there's no harm, there's no foul. Okay, so if these schools find a home, and was it Bowen that just said a minute, or somebody just said something about the 30,000 offered ahead of time and they turned it down? Yeah, that's a factor that weighs against it. This is just one factor, and there are many factors that are all weighed in balance, and they cut both ways. The point is there is exposure, and there's exposure to be managed. You don't want to have this hanging over your head. They need to find a home for these 4 schools, and they need to not lose a whole lot of money, or somebody's going to pay for it. And
I know.
what I'm suggesting is Big Ten could just say we can't take them. If we take them, it cures it. If we take them, they're in the fold, and there's no harm, there's no foul, there's no damages. But it's same with somebody else takes it. So Big Ten doesn't have to take them. The media partners of the Big Ten can say, here's some money. It's like a dowry, like marrying off your daughter, the dower and courtesy. You reward the family for letting the children marry each other. The Big Ten could pay the Big 12 for taking some or all these schools off their hands, and they, by the way, get them to sign this release while you're at it.
I think what you're saying, if I could, I mean, I get where you're going.
That's a
with this.
large conspiracy. You're
I
talking
think the
about.
No,
reason why.
it's
Hold on. Just, I think the reason why the Big did what they did and said what they said about how we don't want to just take them all, we don't want to be held responsible, because I think you're right, but that's why the Big did things in the order that they did, so that they have some way of saying, look, it's not just us. Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, you can't sue us for damages because it wasn't just us. There was this bigger picture unfolding. And then when they talk about their lawyers getting involved, that's what I think is. I don't think you're wrong. I just think the way that they kind of fashioned this happening between the Big 10 and the Big 12 is they kind of cover each other's asses.
They manage their risk, and that's an ongoing process. We're not finished with that process.
We can go further into that, but Bomber wants to go on with the next one.
Yeah, can we go on?
Yeah.
For one thing, we're talking about stuff we can't prove.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
Another
fine,
thing,
but
it's
just-
legal, and so we don't know what's a valid charge and what isn't.
I
So I
speculate
just-
for a living. I give advice.
I
on
understand
stuff
that, and I'm okay with
speculative.
that, but we're starting to get down some rabbit holes that are quite deep that we can't chase, at least not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm done.
Blake, gosh. All righty then. Blake says it's only propaganda if you can't differentiate between opinion and fact, and that is the definition of this show. So if you're new to the show, for one thing, please subscribe, turn on your notifications. But this is the tenet that we run our show on. We do education. We do go out and try to find out facts. You've heard that from Moen and Immaculate over and over again. Charles has brought some information with him, but we all also know that within that, we have to take our opinion and put that into that information and then make a decision. And each one of us can do that, and I hope everybody watching the show does that.
Yeah. My opinion is Blake has the best profile pic of anybody here.
Yeah.
That kid is fired up. We got a week to go till football, and that
I
kid
think
is
you
ready.
said that before.
I love
Blake,
that
another
profile
comment
picture.
says Big 12 becomes Big USA, America's conference. That's a good open question. Do they rebrand? My vote is they don't
Who?
rebrand right now.
Yeah,
Right.
you've already got American AAC, Big U, and you've got Conference USA.
Yeah,
To me, the
eventually you
big-
rebrand.
oh, go ahead.
What about the Big
Yeah, you
Easy?
rebrand.
Yeah.
I think the Big 12 stands for resilience, though. Like just what
I
they
do
went
too.
through, and then what it's become. I mean, I get the whole rebranding thing, but part of it, like how I used to think of the Big 12, I would say rebrand, but that's not how I think of the Big 12 now. So I'm not quite sure if they need to.
I changed my mind on that too. I used to hate that name, and now I like it. So.
Well, and
It
I
stands
like
for something.
I really like what you just said, Immaculate. That's a wonderful way to put it. The resilience.
Yeah.
How many times has this conference been torn apart and rebuilt? And it does stand for something. And since Yormark's gone there, he has done nothing but promote Big 12. If he was concerned about rebranding, I think he would have been hedging his bets long ago, knowing that realignment is still going. But that's my opinion. Obviously, we don't have any facts to back that up. So let's see here. Our web says, Bomber, I agree with you on Washington State. Okay. I appreciate that, our web. Anybody who agrees with me, go ahead.
Can I offer Yormark something? You know, he can have rights to this if he wants. If he doesn't like the Big 12 because it sounds too much like the Big, he could call it the Immaculate 12. I'm okay with that.
The Miracle 12?
Is that kind of like the 12 apostles?
Maybe. We don't want to get
No,
religious here.
Whatever. Don't care.
This is the rest of our web's comment. He says, Bomber, I agree with you on Washington State, OSU, and the Big 12. If Cal and Stanford go to the ACC, I actually said if they go to the ACC or the Big 10. With ESPN's blessing, with a change to CFP revenue distribution being a possible kicker. You guys have talked about that, where the kickers could come in and could sway votes, for instance. Any of that's possible, obviously. Let's see here. Tony L. Barber. I've never seen you before, Tony. Thanks for being here. And he says, Big won't take unless someone like ACC tries to take first. Moen?
Yeah, we're not taking anybody until we know where the ACC is at. That's what's holding all this up. Until we figure out where the ACC is, we can't move.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we keep circling back to this. I mean, we are at a point where everybody wants to see what's going to happen to the ACC, but it's either something's happening right now in this Cal and Stanford coming over, SMU coming over. It's kind of a catalyst for making a decision. It's an inflection point. They need to make a decision. In order to do it, in order to make the best decision, they actually need to let the 4 teams that want out go. And
well, there's 7 teams that
waiting
want
on
out.
that right now. Do what?
Yeah, there's more than
there's
four.
there's more than 4. There's 7 teams that want out.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm not sure all 7 are wanted. If you look at their media numbers, Miami's are not that great.
It's not
speaking
about
as,
those,
speaking
though.
as a Big Ten person,
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what theirs are. The moment
Yeah.
they join the Big Ten, their numbers are going to go
Yeah,
way up.
USC and Miami and
Yeah.
Notre Dame in the same conference. It's like,
Yeah.
it's
So,
unthinkable.
yeah.
But,
I appreciate the numbers. I don't want to like prove
right,
the
I
numbers.
understand.
It's just some cases I don't care what them in my
SEC may say you can have them.
Moen.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Absolutely.
we'll take 'em.
Moen has a comment. Moen
Yep.
has a comment. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Moen.
We'll take them. Miami, I don't give Immaculate's right. It doesn't matter what their ratings are. We need a foothold in
Right.
Florida.
Yeah.
That's where
it's an
all our
anchor.
alumni go to retire.
Right.
Yeah, Miami
Yeah.
might not sell out their stadium, but when Ohio State comes there, half that
Yeah.
stadium's going to be in scarlet and gray.
What about Georgia Tech, Moen, and Syracuse and Pitt for the Big Ten?
We would never take Pitt. Penn State would block it, and they have too much influence. We'd never take Pitt. We would never take Syracuse. Rutgers would probably block Syracuse.
I can see
All
that.
right.
Yeah.
Georgia
That's,
Tech's a possibility, even though everybody disagrees with me.
R. Webb says, Devil Frog, fun fact, Baylor was in the running for George Washington's library. If they won't have it, if they won, it would have been where McLean Stadium is.
GW. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
We're talking about the president?
W's.
We're talking about president?
Yeah,
Okay.
president.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. We're getting
George
near the
W.
bottom.
Bush. They call it W.
Another comment from R. Webb. He says, that Devil Frog, I think being in Dallas and Laura being an SMU grad were the deciding factors. If they were living out at the Crawford Ranch, I think Baylor probably wins. I don't know the region well enough. Do you guys?
So basically, he's saying,
Oh, for the library. He's talking about.
yeah,
the
his
library.
wife had
Library.
a bigger stadium than.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see. Nick says no for SMU, no for OSU, no for Wazoo, no for Cal, and no for Stanford in the Big 12. Sorry, not sorry. Not everyone belongs or deserves to be in a power autonomous conference.
Well,
How
those are
quick
two
do
different
things
things.
change, right? It used to
Yeah.
be Big 12 was like we
Sure.
want to live and survive, and now it's nope, you guys don't.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
What if we had an
Big change.
influence on Cal? If our culture, it was a cultural shift for the country, the whole country. If they had to come over here and learn a different way of life by interacting with us and to see how we live, which is different than they live, and the winds have changed. They it's like a pendulum. It shifts. So Cal and Stanford joining the Big 12 could be the beginnings of a whole shift in the way our whole country
It's an
thinks.
optimistic view on it. I
Yeah.
appreciate your optimistic view on it, sir. But I don't know.
I don't like them either. I don't want to keep. Yeah, but
Yeah, I don't
There
think you
is
get
a
a lot
flip-
of Big 12 people wanting Cal and Stanford. So
I don't mind him as much, but I don't think a lot of Big 12 people would.
yeah,
so,
no,
I don't know.
I would no. I'd go pick
Yormark
your
talked
Mark's
about
car.
the cultural fit. I think that's what he was talking about. Was
That's
this
exactly
right
what he was talking about.
here? Yeah.
John Coy says ACC reminds me too much like the PAC, which is what I've been saying for a minute. And it is a regional conference. Again, value is no longer regional, which again, those were all the basis for my opinions. I think there is an argument to be made, a fair one, whether Stanford and Cal, if they join the ACC, would increase their value enough to make it worth it. I think the biggest challenges, not arguing with Immaculate, but the biggest challenges to those are your travel. You have huge travel problems. And two, Cal and Stanford don't play nice with anybody. They're basically the reason the Pac-12 burned to the ground.
They're like
So,
Texas.
Yeah, and nobody wants another Texas. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where we're at on that.
What's Texas going to do in the SEC? I mean, I'm an LSU fan also. I graduated from LSU, and we're not going to put up with that shit. I guarantee.
No, I don't think so either.
I hope we beat them 6 years in a row, just like we did A&M.
They'll just try to form up a little voting pact in there, probably with like Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas.
A click. Yeah, no, Arkansas
Yeah,
had
real
enough of
quick.
their shit. That's why they left the
Right.
South
I'm just saying they'll try. I don't know whether they will or not. But,
Nick, I'm going to give you an opportunity to address this. Nick M says Charles gives me a Tony Altomore vibe. Lists a lot on his CV, but all his arguments are lacking in fact and or logic. There's your opportunity to kind of counter
Well,
that.
I don't like Tony Altomore. I think he's a punk. But he still had logic on his side, even though it was
Well, it was
flawed.
his logic. I'm not sure
It
he
was
had everybody's
flawed,
logic.
and he monkeyed with the numbers, but he was a good presenter and he was influential.
Yeah.
I have opinions that have some basis in fact, but it's mostly what I see. You either value my opinion or you don't. I give advice for a living, and I tend to give very good advice to my clients. I'm rarely wrong, but I am wrong sometimes. But yeah, a lot of what we're talking about is speculation based on fact. What are our conclusions from the known facts that we have? These are the conclusions we draw. We're connecting dots and filling in between. That's what I've done for my whole life, is do that and do it for juries and make presentations to juries and fill in the dots and get them to make a decision. Nobody has perfect information. You have to make a decision based on the information you have. And all we're talking about is the information we have and the conclusions that we draw based on the limited information that we have. So if you're complaining that I'm not all knowing and I'm omnipotent and dropping perfect fact on you, I'm sorry. I've got something else to say to you, but I'm not. I'll say it first.
You can take that to Twitter, but that was part of the reason we wanted to do this show, is because
you don't want to be held in contempt of court, huh?
Right.
I
have been held in contempt.
We often have people that come on that have differing opinions, and that's okay. We're totally comfortable with that. And so I really appreciate the fact that, you're willing to engage. A lot of people would have gotten mad and not said anything. So
what I'm saying is not the gospel.
Yeah, right.
I'm not pretending like Tony Altimore thinks it's the gospel.
He does.
No,
yeah.
I can be completely wrong in what my guesses are. Absolutely.
Well, I'm never wrong, so
really?
Makes two of.
My ex-wives were never wrong either.
Our web, one of our members. Go ahead, Immaculate.
I was just gonna say, you're the judge, so you get to sit there and say that.
I do, pretty much. You
yes,
can start
sir.
your own show.
Yes, sir.
You guys start your own show. You can do your own thing.
What's the penalty here for contempt of guest?
I'm not forcing anybody to be here. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
No, anyway. Thank you for inviting me.
Charles, I hope you had fun. That's the purpose of this, right?
Time. I was looking forward to this.
And I really appreciate other people's opinions. I know. Look, I grew up debating my entire life. I know the rules of debate. I understand how you win and lose a debate, and so. When you come here, you have to be ready to be challenged, right? And that goes with people on the panel. It goes with people watching the show. You either like it or you don't, right, guys?
I love it. I had a great time.
That's the way it works. So anyway, we're getting down to the end. If you have a super chat and I haven't read it, I haven't seen it. So that means I didn't receive any today, but that's okay. Our web says, I think Big 12 folks are more worried about the California legislators' thoughts on sports than Cal and Stanford. Players organized as unions, revenue sharing. There is a lot of truth to that.
Let's put them in their own subsidiary. That way we can just send them all off together. Yes, San Diego State and all the California schools. Put them in their own sub-conference. Then they play with us, but we can jettison them whenever we want. How about that?
And they can have Notre Dame.
Revenue sharing is coming. Revenue sharing is coming. That's going to happen for players. So, I mean, it's better to get out in front of it than to stick your head in the sand.
Agreed.
I think Kevin Warren started that discussion in the Big Ten. I think Tony Petitti is following suit. You're going to see a pie of that revenue that comes from the media going to players in basketball and football.
All right. Just a couple more comments here. Conundrum says Tony Altimore equals pretzel logic. That is exactly how he won debates, is he would not answer the question. He would deflect to a different one, and it was absolutely a pretzel. You could chase it round and round and never get to the bottom of it.
And he massaged his numbers.
Oh yeah, he put no numbers in context.
Yeah,
he didn't put numbers in context at all. Jeff Wadsworth says, Immaculate and Moen, you get Altimore all the time now that USC is Big Ten bound. I've been saying myself he is not going to enjoy the freedom of movement in the Big Ten that he's gotten in the Pac-12.
He has not had to deal with Ohio State and Michigan fans as of yet, and I'm sure Moen could expound on that quite a bit.
He needs to.
I'll be looking for
make an active contrition.
That'll never happen.
Right there.
That'll never. What did he say?
I'll be looking for him. If USC comes to Ohio State, I'll be there. I'll be a guy in a Moen jersey. It's
I
number
doubt he
68.
shows up.
Tony,
He
if
does
you
not
got a
want to mess
problem,
with it.
you
He'll
can
be-
come talk to me.
He'll be at the NSA desk at the
I'm
time
so
that
glad it
He'll be
all
the
went down the
luxury
way it
suite.
did.
West Virginia Mountaineer Lair. I heard you was looking for someone that was Golden Blue Dude and was his mod for his channel. You were? Is that true, Kenny? I want to talk to you. If you're still watching, send me a message. Actually, I was wondering who did his production, and I had questions. So if you could like send me a DM in Twitter, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Like I'm being dead serious. So I appreciate you putting that note there. I was wondering who did that work. Let's see, Patrick Bourne. I got to get one of his comments in the far left conference. That's funny. Let's
For what?
see.
For the new
What is
Pac-12
this?
name?
I think it's me. Yeah.
Bomber, can you ask Charles if Diamond Sport Belly Sports has got away from Sinclair Sports? We had that question come up the other day. Does anybody know the answer?
I don't
to
know
that one?
everything, man. I don't
Okay.
even know my own school's ADs know. So,
That's true. You didn't.
Was he talking about Bally's that was going? Big?
Yes. Yeah. Bally's. Yeah. The one of the RSNs. Is that what they're called?
I don't know
Regional
if
Sports
Sinclair
Network?
got him.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know the answer to that. Keep asking it though. One of
Yeah.
these shows will have somebody that has the answer. Our web says, guys, California isn't looking to limit revenue sharing to just basketball and football, but Olympic sports too, which was my point in making the comment. So revenue sharing.
Well,
going
I think
to
you're
all
gonna.
of
They
it,
don't
too.
make
Yeah, even though they don't make revenue, there's so much revenue and media money that would come in that you're going to see some of that going to all athletes, a stipend. The football and basketball players are going to get the lion's share of it, though. But I think the most important thing is setting up a thing for after football, almost like a pension fund for these guys if they fall on hard times. Because there are a lot of guys who make it to the NFL, get injured their first season, don't really have a lot to fall back on. So I think it's about protecting the players as well, the athletes as well, having a hardship fund for them to draw from. But, yeah, I think you're going to get to revenue sharing. I think in the Big Ten already, every Big Ten athlete gets a stipend, regardless of what sport they play. I don't know what the exact number is, but they all receive a stipend currently.
in the Big
that
Ten,
helps them.
across the board, the
Yeah,
Big Ten.
that-
Amazing?
That was actually the
Yeah.
subject that caused the autonomous conferences to come into being in the first place. If you remember, there was a
Right.
proposed $2,000 stipend that went to the NCAA for vote, and it got crushed. And that's when the autonomous conferences came out and said, for legal reasons, we're going to have to leave the NCAA if we don't have some capability to handle this, because we think it's going to be a legal problem for us in the future, which it would be, as I'm sure you could attest to for the money numbers. So, yeah, I do believe they have a stipend. I don't know what they settled it on, but I could also see, as he's saying, the numbers that we're seeing for the upcoming 2026 and such, some of that money might have to get funneled down just so that they don't get these lawsuits.
MH5 has a comment here. He says basketball will break from the NCAA at some point. We're not going to dive into that real deep in this show, but in the near future, we're going to have more conversations about basketball and football.
Isn't
And what
that
they
where
could
your
do.
mark's going? Is to get a bigger piece of
He
that?
wants to.
Yeah.
He set that out as a marker. Whether he can actually do it or not, who knows? He has to get somebody to play nice with him on the broadcaster level to make that work. So let's see here. West Virginia Mountaineer. So you gave me name Joey Foster. I'll look him up on Twitter. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other left? All right, we're going to call it there, guys. What an amazing show. I appreciate all you guys being here. It's always fun and insightful. I really appreciate it. Charles, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. And just, continue to do that stuff on Twitter, and you got some good engagement there.
Not
Hopefully
wear
some
me
people
out.
will
I'm
follow
ready
you.
for SMU to get in somewhere, and I can go back.
I'm
and
sure
watch
that's
my
true.
Play football.
I have no doubt that's true. Moen, Immaculate, do you guys want to say anything?
Well, just one thing. I mean, I've actually had plenty of chats with you in chats on videos and whatnot. So it was nice to kind of meet you and have a talk with you like this. So.
We think a lot alike.
On some
Mo and
ways,
I actually think
on
like
other
you
ways
do.
we don't. But you always make a good point and a good argument of it. So I always appreciate that.
I like all you guys. So.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. Moen?
I wish you luck, and you didn't steal Joe Burrow. We let you have him. but you let us have him back, and he's going to bring Cincinnati their first Super Bowl this year. If
We
the
borrowed
Crooked
Thank you.
Zebras,
We
yeah,
borrowed him for free, I guess.
if the Crooked Zebras and Roger Goodell let us.
All right. If you're one last time, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and turn on your notifications. If you want to join, so your comments are more read, like I did tonight with most of the comments, they were with members of the channel. Go to the Big 12 Mafia page on YouTube. Right in the middle of the main page, you hit a join button, and there's 3 options that pop up, and you can go through those and become a member of the channel. The only other thing I want to say is, Charles, I really appreciate you coming. Having never done this before, you did a fine job.
That was the first time.
Yeah, I know, and I think you did a good job. One thing that we've noticed is the longer your answers, the more people tune out a little bit.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so maybe shorten those. That's why Immaculate used to give the same answers you're giving.
I got the same lecture.
Yeah, he's cribbing them down a little bit, and we're doing a lot better because of it. Because people want to hear from you, they just want a small piece.
I mean,
No, that doesn't matter.
We don't
care.
It was good.
like Thomas Jefferson and others said it too. If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
There you go. I like that a lot.
You did really good, especially with the ones that were shot at you from the chat, because you never know what they're going to throw at you, man. You never know.
It takes bravery to come in here.
Yeah, you got.
I mean, you have to have some courage to come on a show like this that's not your own, that doesn't necessarily have allies, and still be able to stand up for what's right. I tip my hat to you. It's wonderful. A couple other things. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I used to get harassed for not having a Big 12 flag. Here's my Big 12 flag, all you haters out there. And then if you want to send stuff into the show, I also recognize that. Here's the KU helmet I got from Summit Hawk. Here's the BYU helmet I got from BYU Mini Helmets, which that's the QR code up in the corner right there. If you want a helmet for a gift or whatever, if you're a BYU fan, go to that, click that link, and there's a bunch of helmets you can buy. And then down here, I got a K-State pennant. I want to make sure I get everybody's names. Brent Nichols did that one. So if you guys want to send me stuff, I'm receiving stuff now almost every day. Send me a DM in Twitter, and I will give you my address, and you can ship it over, or you can come to my house and stalk me.
Call Billy Embody and ask him for an SMU football.
Call who?
Billy Embody.
You'll send me something?
That guy, the guy that
I got his name. You wrote it. I wrote it down.
He covers SMU, and he's
okay. I'm gonna contact him anyway. I'll say
he'll know
Charles Foster Malloy. Charles Foster Malloy said you'd send me a football.
Right. He knows who I am. I'll text him and tell you'll be calling.
Other than that, boy, I don't have anything else. I'm tired. This was full. I wasn't expecting this show to go this long. So lots of good engagement. Appreciate everybody being here. And everybody have a great weekend. Stay out of trouble. And Monday night, 7 o'clock. Well, no, 6:30. So 8:30 Eastern, Monday night. Actually, that's not true. We have 2 shows, don't we? Immaculate.
Yeah.
What was our
Tuesday?
Yeah, what was our other? Yeah, Monday. Don't we have 2 shows Monday?
I thought you were talking Tuesday because of the different times.
It is Tuesday. You're right. So Monday at 8 Eastern, and then Tuesday there's 2 shows, one at 7 Eastern and one at 9 Eastern. Anyway,
are your shows merged now? There used to be 2 different shows.
There are 2. Actually, it started as one, and now I'm spinning off the Holy Rivals. We're working on getting that one monetized. Once that's monetized, then I'll have the two shows. Yeah, we'll cover same things, but we'll cover some different things on the other show too. I think that's all I got, unless there's any last comments here that are worth reading. Yes, West Virginia. I think you gave me his name is Joey Foster. Just post a note there if I got that right. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Stay out of trouble, and peace out.
See you guys.